Story 1.
Devoted husband files for divorce and disappears after uncovering wife's long-term cheating scandals. My name's Alex. I hail from a fractured family, raised by a controlling mother and her meddling sisters. Megan, the eldest, was 13 years my senior, with Anna 10 years older. I suppose I was an unplanned child, blamed for my parents' separation. Dad left in 1977 when I was 5 and never returned. Throughout my childhood, I faced bullying at school and at home. All I craved was my mother's love, a simple gesture of acceptance that never came. Despite the challenges, I excelled academically, dedicating 12 years to my studies. Time passed, and in 1993, I found myself at Kingston University in South London, grateful to escape my home life. It was there I met Holly. Her image is still clear in my mind. She exuded beauty and confidence, while I remained shy and introverted. Holly was in her final year of a creative writing degree, contrasting with my pursuit of a master's in mechanical engineering and design. As I mentioned, I was too timid to approach her, while she attracted attention from men effortlessly. Standing at 5 feet 5 inches with brown hair and captivating brown eyes, she possessed a beauty that seemed beyond my reach. The men who pursued her were outgoing and popular. To my surprise, one of Holly's friends struck up a conversation with me at a party, leading to Holly's eventual inclusion. Despite my limited experience with women, my humility and bashfulness seemed to attract her. Summoning the courage, I asked her out, and we began dating. I'm not ashamed to admit she took my pureness, but after about 6 months, rumors surfaced of her involvement with other men. Unable to substantiate the claims, I hesitated to confront her. Holly was a spoiled child, indulged by her parents and her sister Caroline, which strained our relationship. I endured her entitled behavior, her penchant for creating public scenes, causing me embarrassment. Despite my friends urging me to end the relationship, I found myself in love, a feeling I had never experienced before. After graduation, we both found jobs in a flat outside Southampton, New Hampshire. Her family ties drew us there, as I had long severed connections with mine. We married a year later, welcoming Sophie into the world the following year, and Ava a couple of years after. Holly relished motherhood, and everything seemed perfect between us. Over time, I advanced in my career, eventually joining Walker Engineering 10 years ago. The increased salary and bonuses helped us save for a better house, but like many during the economic downturn of 2008, it was a tough year. Many lost their jobs, and winning contracts became harder, forcing us to work longer hours without extra pay. It was during this time, with both girls in school full-time, that I discovered Holly's affair with a man from our old university. Lost in work, I remained unaware until it was too late. Initially unsure of the identity of her lover, Toby suspected a classmate who had moved nearby. Confronting Holly proved futile, as she laughed off my concerns, though I sensed her deception. Nonetheless, my stable job and income put me in a good position to buy a nice house. Holly constantly pushed me to buy a house that reflected our status, whatever that meant. Despite my reservations, I agreed, and we purchased a lovely detached 5-bedroom house in Southampton. It was a buyer's market, so we snagged a good deal, despite the slightly high mortgage. One thing I did, which was unusual for me, was to open a new savings account in my name only. I only deposited my share of the bonus into it, and since I handled all finances and banking as the sole breadwinner, I doubt Holly even knew about it, even if I waved the receipts in front of her. Looking back, this turned out to be one of the smartest things I could have done. I needed some security because I wasn't sure if Holly planned to leave me if her old flame returned. After that incident, things seemed to return to normal, and my daughters remained my top priority. I supported their education and spent ample time with them on weekends, taking them to various activities like dance classes, concerts, and the zoo. Holly always seemed too preoccupied with her outings with her indulgent and idle friends. I seldom socialized with other husbands, but we all seemed to be somewhat controlled by our wives to varying degrees. My friends would tease me with the song Under My Thumb by the Rolling Stones whenever I had to cancel plans for what Holly wanted. Even at work, my colleagues would make comments about my marital situation, especially Holly's dominance over me. It wasn't until a few months ago that everything came to a head. Ava had just left for university, leaving Holly and me alone for the first time in 18 years. Both our daughters were attending our old alma mater. As I helped Ava settle into her new apartment with her sister, she turned to me and questioned why I was still with their mother. I was taken aback, as Ava had always been quiet, like her old man. "I heard she's fooling around with Henry Walker at your company," Ava said, tears welling up in her eyes. It was news to me, but I wasn't shocked. Over the years, I could have investigated her affairs, but refrained, fearing it would break up the family and cause my daughters to resent me, just as my sisters did my dad. I tolerated her infidelity because I couldn't bear to lose what we had created, despite still loving her. This revelation had several effects on me. Firstly, it made me realize the depth of my daughters' animosity towards their mother, far greater than I had imagined. Secondly, it brought up old feelings from my upbringing and how they influenced my weaknesses. Finally, I realized I was the subject of gossip and ridicule at work, particularly from Henry Walker, who, coincidentally, was the nephew of the owner and the man betraying me. I felt utterly lost, unable to continue enduring this situation, especially now that my youngest daughter was aware of the mockery from Holly. I knew I had to confront her. My heart raced as I sat at the kitchen table, waiting for Holly's return. When she finally appeared, I found myself unable to speak. Once again, she merely looked at me with what seemed like apathy and contempt as she unpacked her bags. Eventually, I gathered the courage to speak. I questioned Holly about the nature of her relationship with someone else. She replied that she wouldn't classify it as an affair, insisting it wasn't that significant. I felt a mixture of shock and disgust, waiting for her to explain how her actions could be justified. She expressed her admiration for me as a provider and a friend, but admitted there were certain needs I couldn't fulfill. I was dismayed by her straightforward admission and asked if it meant she was cheating on me. Holly clarified that it was only her body involved, not her heart or mind. Stunned by her audacious admission, I was left speechless. She nonchalantly mentioned exploring relationships with younger men. Startled, I raised my voice, questioning her actions. Holly cautioned me not to shout, and despite admitting to being involved with 2 other men, she expected my silence. She threatened me with the choice of accepting her terms or risking her departure to be with someone else. I remained silent, hoping she would notice the pain on my face. Attempting to justify her actions, she claimed that such behavior was common among her friends and could even improve a marriage. I was appalled by her attempt to use her friend's actions as a justification, considering it contemptible and self-centered. Challenging her with the idea of having another woman, she laughed off the suggestion, mocking my ability to connect with other women. She confidently stated that our relationship would continue on her terms, warning me not to ruin a good thing. In reality, she was right. Throughout our 22-year relationship, I had displayed unwavering loyalty and compliance with her wishes. Now, everyone knew I was being betrayed, tarnishing my reputation among friends and colleagues. The next morning, I entered my office and was met by Henry Walker, the man involved with my wife. With a smirk, he inquired about Alex's well-being, his smug expression fueling my frustration. I chose to remain silent. Near the coffee machine, I heard laughter from some men. Despite their amusement, I continued past them, feeling exposed. Even Olivia, the boss's secretary, seemed to find my situation amusing. Seated at my desk, I pondered the rough start to my day, feeling ridiculed both at work and home. Despite my efforts to focus, my anger lingered. I resolved to delve into my father's background, knowing only his birthplace and departure at 38 in 1977. Searching family history sites for Cambridgeshire, I found several potential matches. Anticipating his passing before my university years, I narrowed it down to 3 options and posted inquiries on genealogy websites. Lost in thought, my boss, Jack, summoned me to his office. Jack, a successful but morally questionable man, wanted to talk. Despite considering leaving due to his behavior, his persuasion and high pay kept me. I discovered his affair with his secretary Olivia, unbeknownst to his 3rd wife. He plainly mentioned hearing rumors about my wife's infidelity. I retorted, mentioning her involvement with his nephew. He acknowledged the behavior, chuckling about the family trait of being cads, leaving me in silence. The focus shifted to business. He emphasized the importance of family and warned that if personal issues affected the business, I might have to leave the company. It was delivered like a strict teacher scolding a child. I bit my lip, noticing Olivia, his eager secretary, lingering by the door, likely gathering information to share with her friends. As I turned to exit, I couldn't help but wonder why a young woman like her would involve herself with an older man like Jack Walker. Passing by her, I heard more snickering, prompting me to lower my head and walk away. As the door closed behind me, laughter erupted, clearly directed at my expense. Returning to my office, I realized my presence there served no purpose. I had funded my daughter's education, yet now I was essentially financing my wife's infidelities. I was a simple guy who enjoyed his gadgets but could live without extravagances. The majority of my expenses went toward Holly's indulgences, leaving me questioning my happiness. It was my haven for creativity and success, I had designed many of the parts being produced and sold here, and I was confident I could find employment elsewhere. They saw me as weak, and they weren't wrong. I wasn't one to stir up trouble. I was content being good old Alex, the submissive engineer. Glancing at my screensaver of the family vacation, I clicked on my email. To my surprise, there was a message waiting from a woman named Jennifer Holmes from the Cambridge Genealogy Committee. Astonished by the quick response, I read the message and was amazed. Jennifer had read my inquiry about my dad and had connected with a woman claiming to be his niece, Rachel Murray, my cousin. I promptly replied with my contact information, hoping to hear from Rachel soon. Leaving work brought some relief, and upon arriving home, Holly greeted me with a smile while cooking dinner. Though I distanced myself initially, I returned for the meal. She softly asked if we could discuss the previous night, to which I responded that it seemed there was little left to discuss as she had made her stance clear. In response, she almost pleaded, acknowledging my qualities as a husband and requesting that I not deny her anything. I questioned her betrayal and humiliation, seeking an honest answer. Flustered. She shrugged, unable to provide a satisfactory response. Growing weary of her selfishness, I reflected on my efforts to make her happy. Despite working long hours to meet our financial needs and desires, I only received disrespect and mockery. I even drove an older car so she could have a newer one. She acknowledged having needs that I couldn't fulfill and presented an ultimatum: accept it, as she assumed I would, or she would seek satisfaction with a younger man. I interjected, mentioning Henry Walker's name, stating that everyone knew he was involved with her. She admitted to the involvement, bluntly revealing that he was essentially my boss and would inherit the company. She outlined the arrangement. He fulfilled her needs in bed, and if I didn't comply and accept, she would leave me, and he would provide everything else she wanted and needed. As usual, I said nothing and simply rose from my seat, retreating to my study. Tears flowed, and I wished to be anywhere but here. As the phone rang, I answered to hear an unfamiliar voice on the other end. It was Rachel. We conversed for about an hour, and when I hung up, everything else faded from my mind and I wore a huge smile. Rachel was thrilled that I had decided to explore my father's past and had much to share. I discovered that my mother had indeed forced my father out of the house, deceiving me throughout my childhood. Sadly, he passed away in 1983 when I was just 11. He succumbed to drinks poisoning, and my grandmother always blamed my mother for his behavior and mental state. Rachel informed me that after leaving us, he yearned to reconnect with me, but was prevented from doing so. We arranged to meet over the weekend at her home in Cambridge. I was excited, knowing the break would be beneficial. The remainder of the week dragged on. Things at home remained unchanged, and at work, I was continually ridiculed behind my back. Henry and his friends found it amusing to hang a pair of underwear on my office door. I glanced at Olivia, but she remained silent. Enclosed in the underwear was a post-it note that read, "Please return to your wife." I was shattered. I sat at my desk and wept once again that day. I wanted to blame everyone but myself. I couldn't wait for Saturday to come. I informed Holly that I was visiting a friend in London, and she seemed indifferent to my plans. I suspected she would be unfaithful, so being away made it easier for her. The journey to Cambridge proved stressful, and I arrived at Rachel's house an hour later than expected. Surprisingly, she welcomed me with the warmest hug I'd received in years, seemingly unfazed by the delay. I met her husband, Greg, and their children, Grace and William, after which we dove into discussions about my father and newfound family. Rachel's warm and selfless demeanor was evident as she and Greg conversed animatedly, often finishing each other's sentences, eager to share our family story. Joined by David and Lucy Price, my cousin and Rachel's brother, we bonded well, exchanging insights about my father and family. After lunch, we took a short trip, affording me time to reflect. Upon our return, David and I discussed our jobs and family lives, and for some reason, I found myself confiding in my new cousins. They offered unwavering support, advising me not to tolerate my current situation. Leaving Cambridge, I felt a renewed perspective. Having endured numerous lies and mistreatment, the kindness and honesty shown by my newfound family gave me hope. I realized I needed to reclaim happiness, not only for myself, but also for my daughters, friends, and this new family. Returning home at 8 p.m., I found Holly getting ready to go out. I inquired about her plans, and she replied that she was going out with her friends. Catching her off guard, I mentioned her second paramour, Max. She pleaded for me to stop bringing it up, seemingly indifferent to my feelings. I urged her to stop and be my wife. Dismissing my concerns, she insisted that she was and always would be my wife. She asked me not to deny her pleasures, promising to make life easy for me, and assured she would be back by midnight. Ignoring my pleas, she continued to threaten, attempting to embrace me as I turned away. Unfazed, she grabbed her Prada handbag and headed for the door. Asserting my position as her husband, I sternly asked her not to proceed with her plans. She paused, looking at me as if questioning my authority, before bursting into laughter. Mockingly, she asked what I would do, asserting that I would never have the courage to leave her and predicting that I would always be there for her. Crestfallen, I dropped my head, realizing I had been a fool for far too long, catering to her selfishness while neglecting my own needs. It was time to end the charade and make plans for change. I wasted no time in taking action. Actually, I began while she was out with Henry or Max, maybe both together. That's likely what she meant by indulging in her desires and having it all. My thoughts fueled my anger, causing me to lose focus. I needed to find a way to eradicate any remaining affection I held for her, and I believe I found a solution. I located the box containing a specific picture of my mom and sisters, the only one I had. Though skeptical, I cut out a picture of Holly's face and pasted it next to them. With no love left for them, adding Holly's smirking face to the picture might just sever my emotional ties. Placing it on my study desk around 12:45 a.m., I completed the task. I'd mostly devised my short-term plans, even though executing them might take a few weeks. Fortunately, I had the luxury of time, as Holly wasn't anticipating my departure. Though uncertain and requiring assistance, I had convinced myself by then to follow through. I heard someone entering clumsily through the door, and peeking out the window, I witnessed Henry Walker's departure. As I heard her ascending the stairs, I hastily cleared my browsing history, resolving to use incognito mode henceforth. After she retired to our bedroom, I descended the stairs to brew some coffee, reflecting on my future away from here, especially without my daughters. I found it tolerable, deciding to relocate closer to my daughters. Come Monday morning, I headed to work, resolved not to exert myself any longer. Unperturbed by the remarks and laughter directed at me, I arranged a bank meeting for 1 p.m., utilizing the time before to review my finances. Though a gamble, if successful and with the right support, I'd emerge relatively unscathed. The meeting proceeded as planned, allowing me to close my savings account and remove my name from our joint account. With a tidy sum in hand, I shut down the savings account for cash. On the route back to the office, I stopped at a PC World, purchasing 2 digital voice recorders, a 500 gigabytes USB 3 tough drive, and a new PC hard drive. Upon returning, I commenced accessing the company's private customer files, a task that took me an hour to crack Jack's password, ironically his wife's name and his 6-digit birthday. With the necessary access secured, I downloaded all the files to the drive, along with my plans and designs for the energy-efficient hydraulic pump system, positioning the company for continued success. We manufactured pumps for air conditioning units, heavy machinery, and even for the dairy industry. After clearing my PC history, including all plans and work, I shut it down, swapped out the hard drive for a new one, packed everything in my bag, and reinstalled Windows. The remainder of the day was spent researching competitors on my phone and browsing engineering jobs in the South London area on Monster before calling it a day. That evening, following another quiet dinner, I retired to my study, discovering that a major competitor, which had struggled during the financial downturn, sought a mechanical engineer for basic design and shop floor management. It intrigued me. While not precisely what I desired, it was close. Despite the £10,000 lower salary offer compared to my current one, I promptly emailed them my CV. To maintain appearances with Holly, I opted to sleep in our marital bed that night. However, I ensured to sleep when she entered. Her touch made me feel nauseous, but oddly, it pleased me to react this way. I was growing repulsed by her, which would aid me in the long run. The next day, a surprised Robert Williams from Sutton Hydraulics called, expressing disbelief at my potential move from Walker Engineering to his smaller firm. Although he nearly offered me the job immediately, I requested an interview the following day, which he agreed to. Another crucial piece had fallen into place, and things were progressing rapidly. With ample time on hand, I began researching flats in the area, eventually finding one just 15 minutes from my daughters and 5 minutes from work. I scheduled a viewing for the day after the interview with Robert Williams. Subsequently, I informed Jack about needing to visit my daughters in Kingston to sign some papers the next day, to which he casually agreed. That night, I phoned my longtime friend Toby Brown, arranging to meet him and his wife, Sarah, the following evening after my interview and flat viewing. Toby and Sarah, aware that I had something on my mind, eagerly awaited my explanation. Before meeting them, I spoke to my daughters about the situation, receiving their supportive and understanding responses. At the gathering with Toby and Sarah, I disclosed the details of the initial phase of my plans. Their surprise at my decision to fight back outweighed any shock over Holly's infidelity, a common occurrence in their view. Sarah inquired about my decision to leave Holly, offering me another cup of tea. I recounted the revelations from the meeting with my cousins, including my father's expulsion from the house by my mother and my sisters siding with her. I noted that my daughters supported me this time. Toby expressed concern, questioning if the discovery at the meeting had spurred me to stand up for myself. I clarified that it was during a visit to my father's grave that I noticed something on the stone, which shocked me and prompted my decision to leave. They both asked simultaneously about what I had seen on the memorial stone. I shared that it featured a rose image with the words "in loving memory," followed by my father's birthdate and age at passing. Coincidentally, my current age. Toby and Sarah slightly recoiled, indicating their understanding. I explained that I faced a choice when confronted with moments that could lead to drink loving or worse. As my grandmother believed, I decided not to emulate my father and instead chose to fight back. I continued, revealing that I wouldn't sacrifice myself trying to be the perfect husband any longer, enduring misuse and ridicule. I confessed to my friends, feeling vulnerable about how low I had sunk. Sarah offered help and shared her plan to protect herself and get back at Holly. I smiled and nodded, appreciating Sarah's toughness despite previous suspicions of her affair. Explaining my financial strategy, I shared that in 2008, I established a separate savings account, depositing all my bonuses and extra cash. Securing a mortgage required only my name, making it easier for me to apply a loan. I outlined Toby's role in transferring ownership of my house to a new company he would create to settle the mortgage, transferring the deeds through the land registry. Toby voiced skepticism about the plan, but I assured him that Holly wouldn't have the means to contest it. I pointed out that her religious parents, upon discovering her infidelity, would prioritize their principles over supporting her. They agreed and even offered to help cover the mortgage. On my way home, I visited the local Land Rover dealership, where I negotiated to trade Holly's car for the latest model. We terminated the payment plan for the Range Rover Sport she had, benefiting the dealership from reselling it. I assured the dealer that I would return for my own upgrade, knowing he could recoup the cost of Holly's car by selling it as practically brand new. I apologized for any inconvenience, but explained that the prospect of selling me an expensive new Range Rover more than compensated. Upon leaving, I picked up a 2016 brochure, not for myself but for Holly. Upon arriving home, she sat in the lounge, nursing a coffee and looking pale. I removed my jacket and tossed my bag onto the floor, preparing to enact the second part of the plan. I expressed my love for Holly and my desire for her to have the best. I declared that I would trade in her car and buy her a new 2017 model, pointing to it in the brochure. Expressing her enthusiasm, she exclaimed that she loved the new car. Unaware of my plan, she acknowledged my ability to make her feel better, mentioning the only hiccup being that they already had a buyer for my car. She proposed taking it to the dealership by Friday afternoon, leaving work early for the task. She suggested I use her car for the weekend to visit my lovers, causing her to recoil at the final remark, a look of shock and confusion crossing her face. Inquiring about what was wrong, I prompted her to address the situation. She mentioned nothing specific but asked if I was still upset about our arrangement. I clarified that it was not our arrangement but rather hers, emphasizing that I had no say in it. I questioned if I had no choice but to accept it, hoping for a response. She simply nodded, appearing as if she had asserted her dominance and I had surrendered. Despite the circumstances, she declared that she loved me, expressing genuine concern. I said nothing in reply and walked off into the kitchen. My phone began to ring, so I headed out to the back garden to take the call. Toby confirmed the money had been transferred. I was good to go the next day. Without delay, I entered the bank and was shown into the mortgage specialist's office. An hour later, the mortgage was paid off, and all my remaining accounts were closed. I walked a few doors down and opened a new account with another bank. I was content knowing I wouldn't have to pay anything again unless Holly pursued legal action and took me to court. My smile faded the next day. I contacted the land registry and completed the appropriate online application with all the details of Toby and Sarah's new company. Within 10 minutes of applying, I received a confirmation email stating it would take 3 to 5 days to complete. Once done, I would simply hand over the deeds to Toby and he could register the property to his company. That same day, I knocked on Jack's door. Olivia was with him, as usual. Fridays were typically when he had his way with her, and I believe I interrupted their closeness activities. She left us alone. Placing my resignation on his desk, he looked up at me with that stupid smirk on his face. He inquired about the document in my hands. I replied that it was my resignation and expressed the belief that leaving immediately would be best considering the situation with our families. I suggested that he might not want me around for too long. He appeared dumbstruck by the news. I boldly requested that my P45 be ready by Monday and emphasized not mentioning my departure to anyone. Holly didn't know. He pleaded pathetically, insisting that they needed me. I countered by saying they apparently needed his nephew more. I informed him that I would return on Monday to collect the last of my things discreetly. I pretended to drop a pin from my pocket, using the opportunity to remove a digital recorder from my sock. Constructing a pin for it, I hit record and discreetly placed it under the seat and into the wooden frame as I stood back up. Concluding the conversation, I mentioned having things to do and left his office. As a parting shot, I told him not to come crawling back when he's broke, suggesting that the only thing keeping his cheating wife with him was his money. I smiled, knowing that it hit a nerve. Turning, I left his office. An hour later, I drove home, picked up Holly's car and logbook, and dropped off her car at the dealership. John Reeves kindly offered to drive me home, and I accepted gratefully. When I got home that night, Holly was sitting at the kitchen table with big red bags under her eyes. I knew she had been crying. I asked her what happened. Reluctantly, she told me she had contracted gonorrhea. I laughed. Oh, did I laugh? She just glared at me. She suggested taking the medications to get back to normal, and the tension in the air was palpable. That night, for the first time in months, I slept well. The next morning, I slept in the spare room and felt refreshed. The good night's sleep had done wonders for me. I entered our bedroom and gently woke Holly, explaining that I was giving her space to rest and recuperate. Holly expressed a belief that I found her disgusting, to which I remained silent. Tears started streaming down her cheeks as she admitted to messing up big time. She professed her love for me and expressed a desire for me to get better. Initially, I felt sympathy for her, but it vanished quicker than expected. That surprised me. It dawned on me then that I had lost all affection for the woman I'd been married to for 21 years. Could love truly fade away so swiftly? Apparently so, because I was done, and her situation did nothing to sway me. I left the room without saying a word. I got into my car and drove off contentedly. That night, I stayed with Toby and Sarah, who hosted a dinner party with many friends and colleagues present. When I returned home late Sunday morning, I found Holly up doing chores. Walking into the lounge, she rushed towards me and hugged me when she saw me. I simply patted her on the back. Excitedly, I suggested arranging for the new car to arrive, offering to drop her off in town to meet her sister, who could then drive her to the dealership. I envisioned her driving back in the new Range Rover, and she smiled. Approaching me with open arms, I turned back to the kettle, pretending not to notice her. Throughout the day, Holly displayed excessive affection, making me feel uncomfortable. She persistently tried to kiss or hug me, but I kept finding excuses to leave. By bedtime, I noticed she had been crying again. Wishing her good night, she inquired if I would be sleeping with her and expressed a desire to cuddle up and hear reassurances. Feeling nothing, I responded that it wouldn't happen until she got the all clear from the doctor. I firmly asserted that she made her bed, to which she retorted bitterly, stating that when she got better, she was sure she could find a man willing to be in bed with her, as she had plenty of lost time to make up for. I chuckled to myself. It took longer than expected, but there it was, and the harshness was back. All the regrets from Friday night had vanished, leaving behind 21 years of resentment. In the past, I would have fallen for her manipulations, but this time I ignored her tears and headed for the spare room. It would be my last night in my house, and it would be in the spare room. I was also relieved she said those things. It erased any lingering doubts I might have had. As I looked at my doctored picture of her and my sisters, all I felt was hatred for her. She was only sweet when she wanted something, and nasty when she didn't get it. I woke early Monday morning. Holly was up early too, for her 8:30 hair appointment, so I drove her into town as planned. I drove off, knowing it could be the last time I ever saw her. I feared it wouldn't be, but I was determined to make it so. On the way, I called the mobile phone company and terminated both our contracts. Pulling over into a lay-by, I paid the penalty on my card. They informed me that the phones would remain in service until 5 p.m. Perfect. Next, I headed to the office to pick up my P45. I stepped into the factory, greeted by a somber atmosphere. Word of my departure seemed to have spread, briefly eliciting looks of fear from my colleagues. Unsure of the reason behind their unease, I made my way down the corridor toward my office, passing by the coffee machine where the usual group was gathered. Uncertain if Max and Henry were aware of their shared involvement with my wife, they grinned at me, exchanging jokes with others. I greeted them with false cheer, saying good morning. They asked about my wife, prompting the usual laughter at the recurring joke, which I failed to find amusing. I replied that she wasn't doing well. attributing it to one of them giving her an unwelcome surprise. I left them in stunned silence, and when I glanced back, their jaws had dropped, leading to a commotion. Before I headed upstairs, approaching Olivia, she offered a half smile and lowered her head, perhaps indicating that I was now earning some respect. Jack appeared at the door before I could knock. He asserted that he had what I wanted, instructing me to take it and get out. Perhaps that respect was merely my imagination. Entering his office, I sat down, discreetly slipping a recorder into my pocket from under the chair. I knew he'd had his usual Friday rendezvous with Olivia, and now I had it recorded. He snapped, inquiring if I had another job lined up. Initially ignoring him, I relented and replied that I had nothing lined up. A smirk played across his face, likely assuming I would come crawling back. I inquired about my final month's pay and end-of-year bonus, to which he burst into laughter. Olivia entered with my P45, and when she asked what was amusing, Jack explained that I had requested my bonus and pay. Finding it rich, Olivia chimed in, laughing along. Deciding to join in, I responded with laughter, causing them to pause and stare at me incredulously. Olivia questioned why I was laughing, and I retorted, asking her why she let the old man take advantage of her every week. My laughter intensified, and they froze, with Olivia's eyes widening as Jack flushed with rage. In response to Jack's anger, he spat out, calling me a scoundrel and instructing me to get out of his office and his company before he had the boys drag me out by my ears. Chuckling, I exited, collecting the last of my belongings from my office, still laughing to myself. I arrived home, unloaded the back seats, opened the trunk, and entered the house, surveying the rooms. I pondered what to take with me. Retrieving a few Romero Brito artworks, I wrapped them in plastic found in the garage and loaded them into my car. I went around the house, collecting various items, then emptied my wardrobe upstairs. I secured all my important paperwork, including the girls' birth certificates and my wedding certificate, from the safe. Utilizing a loft ladder, I retrieved my old belongings, including my degree and family photos. In the master bedroom, I gathered all the jewelry I had gifted Holly over the years, totaling over £10,000 in value. I also took all the handbags, shoes, and expensive coats I had purchased. In fact, the entire wardrobe was my acquisition, so I claimed it all. Given my meticulous record-keeping for insurance purposes, it would prove beneficial when selling everything. After finishing packing, I realized I'd need a TV, so I grabbed that along with my movie collection and the Blu-ray player. By now, my car was too full. I decided to ditch all of Holly's clothes and a few other unnecessary items, including some of my old clothes. I knew I would need a new wardrobe, and the girls would gladly help me out. I gathered the best pictures of me and the girls and packed them in the car. No real rush, since Holly wouldn't be back until after 2 p.m. I took a moment for a cup of tea, a must-have. I believe it's in the Magna Carta. I called the TV company and canceled the satellite phone and internet. I also contacted British Gas and Southern Water to cancel utilities. It would take a few days, but I didn't care. Returning to the bedroom, I sat on the bed when I noticed something that sparked an idea, one that scared even me. Holly's wedding dress sat at the top of the wardrobe in a dusty old box. She loved it, probably more than me. I took it down and found our wedding album among the box of photographs on the bed. Grabbing the duvet cover, I gathered everything and headed to the garden. Dumping everything into a pile, including Holly's clothes and belongings I couldn't sell, I left her underwear untouched. Didn't want any reminders. I closed up the car and checked the time, only 1:45 p.m. I called up Robert Williams and told him I'd drop off my P45 later with the night shift, eager to start fresh tomorrow. He seemed pleased, and I hoped I'd brightened his day. At 2 p.m., I sat waiting for the call. I found some paint thinners in the garage and poured it all over the wedding dress in the garden. Just as I was about to light the fire, my phone rang. I answered calmly, and Holly's voice came through the phone, demanding to know what was going on. I replied sarcastically, asking her what she meant. Insisting that I shouldn't play dumb, she continued to question me. I asked her to calm down and inquired about what was happening. There was silence, and I could hear her heavy breathing and what sounded like her sister in the background. She mentioned that she had been told I didn't get her a new car, but sold hers instead. Teasingly, I mentioned that I might have forgotten to mention that. She started to sound panicked, asking what was going on. Remaining calm despite my racing heart, I informed her that from now on, if she wanted a car, she could pay for it herself. She yelled in response, expressing confusion and frustration. I reiterated that she heard me just fine and added that I needed to tidy up the kitchen. She questioned if it was some kind of sick joke, to which I said nothing. She declared that we would talk about it when she got home, expressing her dissatisfaction with being pranked. I remained silent. I hung up the phone amidst her continued screams of my name. Stepping outside, I struck a match and ignited the pyre. Our history went up in flames as I walked away. Retrieving our marriage certificate from my pocket, I tore it into shreds and left it on the kitchen table alongside a lone photograph of us at Disneyland, capturing happier times. I wondered if she reminisced fondly about those moments too. Sliding into my car, I drove off. Approaching the end of the street, I glimpsed Holly and Jennifer in my rearview mirror rushing into the house. Without a glance upward, with a smile, I powered off my phone and drove on. By 4 p.m., I reached Sutton. Deciding I had time, I visited a nearby phone shop to set up a new mobile contract. Additionally, I caught the admin team at work to handle my P45 and met Freya, my new secretary, who, unlike Olivia, exuded professionalism despite her youth. Returning to my empty flat, I brewed a cup of tea with a kettle borrowed from home. I unpacked and ordered pizza for dinner. Checking my old phone, I found it disconnected. A smirk crossed my lips, knowing Holly was now phoneless too, affording the girls some respite before my inevitable contact. Setting up my sleeping bag in the lounge, I awaited dinner. Furniture would arrive over the weekend, but for now, I relished the distance from Holly. Switching on my laptop, I accessed recordings from Jack Walker's office, revealing his affair with Olivia. After uploading the evidence, I made copies on USB sticks, addressing them to Jack's wife, Margaret, and Olivia's boyfriend, Peter. I planned to mail them the next day. Lastly, I phoned my daughter Sophie to update her, cautioning against informing her mother of my whereabouts, which she hadn't done yet, given Holly's lack of communication means. Over the following week, I furnished my flat and began diverting customers from Walker Engineering to Sutton. Despite a few loyal to Jack, most preferred our offerings, leading to Walker's loss. I anticipated Jack's discovery of the reason for his business decline, but remained indifferent. With utilities cut off at my former home, Holly would realize my absence as she struggled with bills. Toby initiated the home sale process, backed by Sarah's enthusiasm, and by week's end, signs adorned the property. During this time, Ava contacted me, revealing Holly's relocation to her parents' home, where disapproval lingered over her infidelity. Holly seethed with rage toward me, which oddly gratified me, though I knew the saga wasn't over. By the weekend, Toby and Sarah hosted another successful dinner party, offering a moment of respite from my escape plan. Sunday brought promising news. After just a week on the market, I received 2 serious offers for £550,000, one of which I accepted immediately. Preparing for the completion, I arranged houses for the girls and investments, ensuring Toby was compensated and securing a portion in cash for my safety. Protecting myself remained a priority. As the week progressed, Toby's news that the sale could move swiftly filled me with delight. I promptly reached out to a removal company, tasking them with clearing out my former home. Meanwhile, the girls contacted their mother, who responded with heightened anger and threats, assuring the girls that the turmoil would soon end. I offered them solace. On Tuesday morning, during a conversation with a new client who had recently met with Jack Walker to discuss a possible contract renewal, I learned of Walker Engineering's dire situation. The client revealed that due to a significant loss of projects, the company had to lay off 50% of its staff. Additionally, he informed me of Mrs. Walker's decision to divorce Jack over his infidelity. Despite this revelation, I felt no sympathy, my mind preoccupied with calculating commission checks. While I remained unaware of Olivia and her boyfriend's fate, I knew he had received my gift. Whether Mrs. Walker had received hers or not, the reason behind their impending divorce was undoubtedly clear. I pondered what Mrs. Walker's friends and family would think of her affair with an older man. In recognition of my efforts, I was rewarded with a brand new Land Rover Discovery HSE. Although I had contemplated treating myself beforehand, Robert and the executives were so pleased with my performance and the company's trajectory that they bestowed upon me the car, along with a substantial commission surpassing £30,000. Gazing out of my office window at my new car, I was taken aback when a familiar Ford Focus pulled into the parking lot. I discovered the car belonged to Diane, Ava's mother, anticipating an inevitable confrontation. I braced myself as my office phone rang. My secretary, Freya, informed me that there was a woman claiming to be my wife in the reception. I instructed her to tell the woman that I was in a meeting and that I would be down in an hour. 3 hours later, I glanced out the window to find her still waiting. With a sigh, I decided to leave for the night, prepared to confront her if necessary, or simply drive past if she didn't spot me. Exiting through a side door, I headed toward my car. As I was about to get in, I heard tires screech, and before I knew it, she had blocked me in with her car. Stepping out, she stormed toward me with fury, evident in her disheveled appearance. Clearly distressed and clad in worn-out clothes that appeared to be her sister's, her unkempt hair added to her disarray. "You damn idiot," she screamed, attempting to slap me but missing her mark. Fueled by rage, she demanded retribution. Urging her to calm down, I invited her to sit in the car with me. Surprised by the sight of the new car, she expressed her financial struggles and pleaded for my return. I informed her that since I couldn't fulfill her needs and didn't match up to her younger lovers, I felt redundant in her life. She then pleaded for me to come home, expressing a desire to move past the situation and forgiving me. I couldn't believe my ears and asked if she was kidding. She affirmed that she forgave me for wrecking her things and her life. Questioning her forgiveness, I pointed out the open cheating, disrespect, and her nerve to claim forgiveness. I stated firmly that I would never be with her again, and coldly suggested she go be with one of her lovers. She mentioned that her friends treated her differently now that they were separated, and their husbands questioned their fidelity. While acknowledging some responsibility for her misfortunes, I still sympathized with her. She admitted to facing consequences for her actions, having squandered a good life due to greed and disrespect. Despite this, I knew I had to move forward. She pleaded for me to come back into her life, claiming to have nothing left. She inquired about her share of the house and mentioned her need for a divorce. I pointed out that she had never once said she loved me, stating that she just needed me, but I didn't need her. I disclosed that I had defaulted on the mortgage and lost the house, admitting to lying. Her reaction was one of shock, and I understood the purpose of her visit. Declaring my desire for a divorce, she pleaded desperately, claiming to love me. After over 20 years together, she pleaded, acknowledging a mistake and claiming severe punishment. I emphasized that it was a huge, unforgivable mistake, stating firmly that I would never return to her. She screamed and begged, filling the car with her cries. Offering a proposition, I suggested a clean break and offered £30,000 in cash if she agreed. Her demeanor changed, and she became resolute. She yelled, threatening to fight me in court for everything, asserting that I didn't lose the house and was too smart for that. Acknowledging her correctness, I found myself on the defensive. I started by stating firmly that she wouldn't get a penny from me. She squared up to me, and I explained that I would fight her for everything and more. I asserted that she had no money, and I would move my assets around to make it difficult for her to track them down. I warned her that by the time her lawyer found anything, the bill would wipe out any gain. I gave her a choice: take the money offered or face the consequences of a legal battle. Never breaking eye contact, she exclaimed angrily, expressing love and accusing me of mistreatment. She continued, stating that thanks to her, our girls would thrive, contrasting their future virtues with her perceived shortcomings. I told her to take the money and get out of my life, and she spat back, agreeing to take the money and proceed with the divorce. I responded that I would arrange it, and she exited my car, slamming the door shut. Moments later, she sped away from the car park. The following day, I initiated divorce proceedings, citing infidelity as the grounds. A week later, I arranged a meeting with Holly at the girls' apartment. Despite the completed sale of my house, I postponed investing until the papers were signed. Maintaining civility in front of the girls proved challenging. I handed Holly the cash, and she proceeded to sign the papers. After bidding farewell to the girls and wishing Holly luck, I prepared to leave. Holly suddenly burst into tears, though I sensed it might have been more for the girls' benefit. Sophie and Ava exchanged knowing glances. Ava mentioned seeing me next weekend, referring to the Coldplay concert they were excited about. I returned to the room where Holly continued to sob, unnoticed by the others. Suddenly, I realized what Ava meant about the concert. Sophie inquired about our plans, and I mentioned checking with Amy and letting them know during the week, before departing. Ignoring Holly's shouting as I left, I closed the door behind me.
Story 2.
Tyson Summers finalized the last set of documents provided by Jason, crucial for Jason's management of a specific portfolio, among the largest under Ty's responsibility. This portfolio included the holdings of Wilson Graves, a billionaire investor and entrepreneur affectionately called Willie Graves. Willie thrived on using his wealth for hostile takeovers, acquiring stocks to gain control. Upon success, Willie's strategy involved rapid divestment to enhance his investment's value and involve other trusting individuals. Damn those who got hurt. Serving as Willie's lawyer and legal adversary, Ty successfully maintained Wilson's honesty and kept him out of trouble with the SEC and other federal regulators scrutinizing individuals like Graves. This allowed Willie to amass more wealth, benefiting Summers, Reinhardt, and Haynes Inken. Jason also made strides in managing portfolios for his other clients, aiming to gain full control within the remaining 2 weeks. This would conclude the 3-month process of transferring all of Ty's clients, excluding his special clients. Only Jason, Stacy, Reinhardt, and Clayton Haynes were privy to Ty's impending retirement. Ty reminded himself once more that it was time to let go and prioritize personal time. As one of the founding fathers of the firm, along with Stacy and Clay, they transformed it from a small storefront law firm into one of Columbus, Ohio's largest and most influential. However, this success took a toll on Ty's personal life, impacting both his marriage to Bridget and their family. Celebrating their 20th wedding anniversary last month, Ty and Bridget had 2 children, 19-year-old Jake and 18-year-old Tessa, both thriving in college. Despite the material comforts, Ty realized that Bridget's disinterest in their love life was a significant issue. While Ty's lovemaking drive remained active, Bridget attributed her low libido to a temporary phase, promising to discuss it with her doctor during her next checkup, which was almost a year ago. Their love life hadn't improved, and Ty, frustrated, chose to let the matter rest without further discussion. The source of his concern was Bridget's frequent trips back to her hometown of Mansfield, Ohio. She explained it was due to her mother's declining health, and her sister Bianca, who lived there, needed assistance. Both still resided in Mansfield, and Bianca, divorced and alone, benefited from Bridget's stay during these visits. Bridget felt it was the least she could do to relieve Bianca and allow her some free time. These trips started 6 months ago and now occurred bi-weekly, with Bridget departing on Thursday morning and returning late Sunday night. She maintained communication by calling every evening at 9 and ensuring her cell was always accessible. However, this meant Ty spent 3 or 4 days alone every other week, a situation he now disliked. Bridget left this morning for her latest trip, leaving Ty alone again. Despite his disappointment, he revealed to Bridget that he was working on a big surprise, ready in a couple of weeks. He even attempted to pique her interest by mentioning Stacy's involvement, hoping her curiosity or even jealousy over Stacy would make her stay and find out the secret. Bridget showed minimal curiosity, and Ty, not surprised, let it go and left her to packing. After their usual goodbyes, Ty left for work, knowing she would be gone within the hour. Later that day, Ty closed up his office, chatted with Rachel, his secretary, and walked down the carpeted hall to Stacy's office for a conversation before heading home. He knocked once and pushed the door open, a habit accepted by all partners accustomed to his unannounced visits. Ty greeted Stacy and suggested they finish work for the day, offering to buy a drink. Stacy expressed her reluctance to go home to an empty house. Another colleague, Roger, was waiting for her as they planned to attend their son's school play, where Roger Jr. had the lead role in Pirates of Doom. Ty teased Stacy about the play, but acknowledged that parents are naturally biased when it comes to their children's performances. Stacy laughed and agreed. At 46, happily married for the past 10 years, she reassured Ty about the progress on the project and declined assistance from Jason, noting that everything was on track. Concerned about Ty's upcoming retirement, Stacy expressed her wish to talk him out of it, emphasizing that he had been the driving force behind the company's success. Ty complimented Stacy's contributions and assured her that she, along with Clay and the younger team members, would continue to excel. He praised the younger generation's dedication, particularly mentioning Jason and expressing the possibility of offering Alice Chambers a partnership in the future. Stacy expressed her liking for Jason and Alice and mentioned that Raj would also attend the upcoming party. Ty welcomed Raj and bid Stacy goodnight, planning to see her the next day. Ty drove to his estate home in the Columbus suburbs, situated on a 5-acre lot and encompassing just over 5,000 scaff. It featured a hot tub flowing into a pool, a cabana, 2 tennis courts, and a spacious garden with flowers and flowering shrubs, providing color throughout the summer and into the fall. With the departure of the kids, Bridget had let go of the cook and maid, leaving the house mostly empty. Acknowledging that it was too large for the 2 of them, Bridget agreed they hadn't committed to it, but suggested it was time to consider moving into something smaller. Maybe they should give it a couple more years, she proposed. Ty parked in the 4-car garage and entered the kitchen, where he placed a frozen dinner in the microwave before changing into casual clothes for the evening. Returning down the steps, he heard the landline ring, hoping it was related to one of his ads, as it was too early for Bridget to call. Answering the call, he was pleased to discuss his boat, a 32-foot powered sailboat moored at Lake Erie in the summer and fall, winter stored at a facility on the lake. After a fruitful discussion with someone who had taken the boat for a run with the marina owner covering for Ty, the deal was finalized. An agreement was made to send a cashier's check for the agreed-upon price to a post office box number Ty provided. Once the check was received, the title to the boat would be available at the marina. The purchaser had reviewed the title when taking the boat out for a trial run. Everything was in place. Bridget, who had never liked the boat and hadn't been out with Ty in years, would be pleased. With the boat sold and his Jaguar and Audi promised to successful high bidders, there was little left to worry about. 2 weeks from today, everything would be in place for his retirement. The house might take time to sell, but by then, Ty and Bridget would be in the smaller bungalow, ready for showings. He had already moved some furniture there, and any additional pieces could be purchased as needed. Ty mechanically consumed the frozen dinner and decided to relax with mindless TV and snacks. Taking a bottle of cold Miller Lite to the entertainment room, he opted for adult content, contemplating the lack of imagination in the scenes as the actors repeated the same actions in the same way. The movie failed to arouse him enough to take matters into his own hands. While the film unfolded, Ty pondered why the actors all followed the same script, gazing into the camera without any imaginative flair, merely aiming for titillation. He lacked the enthusiasm to engage in personal activities. At 9, Bridget phoned, and Ty answered, asking about any issues getting there. Bridget assured him of an easy trip and mentioned that her mom was doing a little better, but her sister Bianca was stressed. She suggested staying an extra day if it was okay with Ty. Despite feeling a clench in his stomach, Ty dismissed the discomfort and agreed, telling Bridget to do what she thought was best. He mentioned that he would stay at work a little longer, as it was lonely without her. Ty also inquired about Monday, asking if she needed anything and noting that she didn't take much with her. Bridget explained that she had things left behind and assured Ty that she would be fine. She then brought up the surprise he had mentioned earlier, expressing anticipation to find out what it was. Ty, somewhat surprised by her interest, informed her that it was right on schedule, with Stacy almost done with her part and the rest already in place. Bridget promised to call him tomorrow night and said goodnight, ending the call with a simple, "I love you." Observing Bridget's eagerness to end the calls quickly, Ty noted that she didn't reciprocate his "I love you" with more than a good night. Despite this, he smiled, attributing her quick endings to her potential busyness with her mother. Ty then reflected on Bridget's family dynamics, noting the dysfunction and his own lack of fondness for her mother and sister Bianca, who had been divorced for cheating. So, the rest of my weekend alone continues, Ty thought to himself to occupy himself. He called the kids, talked with them for an hour or more, reminding them of his summons for them to come down in 2 weeks, and then just let himself go. He fell asleep on the couch and woke during the middle of the night with a stiff neck. He went to bed and slept without dreams. That was unusual, but Ty welcomed it. Lately, his dreams had not been pleasant. The next 2 weeks passed as normal, with Ty working to finish all his cases and make sure Jason was up to speed on all of them. He spent most of that second week calling his clients and letting them know of his pending retirement. They were, for the most part, happy for him and willing to work with Jason. A few wanted assurances from either Stacy or Clayton, and he made sure they were contacted right away. Things were all in place by that final Thursday when Bridget left for Mansfield. Ty had managed to keep his pending retirement secret from Bridget as planned. She rarely asked about his work anymore, so it was not much of a problem. In addition, she had forgotten about the surprise, and Ty didn't bring it up again before she left. He would mention it Sunday morning when she called to tell him she was about to leave, especially if she decided to stay an extra day again. Either way, Ty was prepared. Friday marked Ty's ultimate day, filled with bustling activity. Collaborating with Rachel, they cleaned the house and transferred paper files to Jason. Following a few more phone calls, Ty instructed Rachel to shift all his new calls to Jason, aligning with his plan. Having assigned Jason his secretary, Rachel had experience working with her. Ty's last morning task was telling Stacy to set things in motion, and she affirmed readiness. Though she left for the courthouse later that morning, Stacy promised to return in time for the retirement party at the Radisson Hotel. Despite everyone knowing Bridget couldn't attend, it didn't delay the proceedings, promising an enjoyable time. Ty left immediately after lunch to address several necessary tasks, and by 3 that afternoon, everything was in place. The final papers for the house were signed, and movers were already on their way, committed to finishing by late Saturday afternoon. Once the movers finished, the crew Ty hired to clean the place thoroughly would arrive, with orders to complete the task by that evening. They were promised a bonus if they finished on time. Realtors assured Ty that the "For Sale" sign would be in the front yard by late tomorrow, revealing a listing of interested parties who wished to view the property starting the following Monday. To their satisfaction, Ty had competitively priced it for a quick sale. The last task for Ty was ensuring that all financial arrangements were in place. Bridget and he had 2 separate accounts, aside from the joint ones, each with their credit card. It was Ty's insistence that they carried only 1 card each, disapproving of running a credit balance. Bridget, adept at financial management, was never frivolous with money. She skillfully managed their accounts, aware of Ty's private business accounts managed by his company. Unaware of Ty's accounts at the firm, Bridget, over the years, had neither inquired nor remembered. Retiring, Ty closed all joint accounts carrying both their names, transferring the retirement account to a new brokerage. Ty intended to manage all their joint affairs in cash temporarily, or at least until they had settled on everything. Since the new home would be located outside the States, Ty moved the accounts beyond the U.S., having already opened an online account with an international bank with outlets in Europe and South America. Ty was confident that Bridget would easily adapt to the change, as she was very intelligent about money matters. Finally, Ty confirmed that the tickets were in hand, contemplating spending the next several months with Bridget in a beautiful Costa Rican resort. Sun, sand, swimming, sailing, horseback riding, they had it all. Ty, having made a solo trip to the resort to confirm its authenticity, instructed Rachel to book the trip and make the reservations, desiring everything to be confirmed by the time of his retirement. Tyson was quite prosperous, accumulating substantial wealth from handling high-profile cases for affluent clients, charging accordingly. His clients, recognizing his expertise, retained him with substantial retainers. Ty invested his earnings in high-risk accounts, yielding significant returns over the years. As a lawyer, he leveraged his legal knowledge to move most of his money into offshore accounts legally, without any agreements with the U.S. These accounts remained intact, unbeknownst to Bridget, adding an element of surprise. If she were aware, she would be astonished at their value. Importantly, this money was outside the States, not subject to U.S. tax laws or the U.S. courts, had ensured everyone in the firm kept it quiet. Despite Bridget suggesting retirement, it had been dropped over the past year. Ty believed his retirement would please her, given her complaints about the time he spent at work. He informed everyone that it would be a surprise for Bridget, with plans to announce everything on Sunday night when she returned. Ty was confident she would be home Sunday, intending to initiate the surprise during her morning call. So far, everything had gone perfectly. The party was enjoyable, with Ty dancing with all the women and talking to all the men, sharing war stories of their most interesting cases. Jason spent most of his time around Ty, ensuring nothing important escaped his notice. Ty thought highly of Jason, foreseeing him as a valuable asset to the firm. Stacy and Clay, privy to all his plans, were sworn to secrecy. As his attorneys, Stacy subtly expressed pleasure in what he was doing. Ty danced with her, discussing the final steps. Stacy assured Ty that everything was ready for the surprise, documenting checks and amounts to ensure Bridget's surprise and Ty's satisfaction. Ty expressed confidence in Bridget enjoying the surprise, and Stacy sarcastically whispered her agreement. Ty laughed and shared that he had tickets for a Costa Rica resort with plans to leave Sunday night. He promised to call her with a permanent number, but mentioned that his new cell would be active in the meantime. He suggested Roger and Stacy do something similar. Stacy replied that she enjoyed what she was doing too much to quit at the moment. Ty encouraged her to tell Clay that he was sorry for not including him in all their plans. Ty stayed at the party until almost midnight before leaving. He missed Bridget's call, but found a voicemail. Bridget informed Ty that she was going to her mom's that night, asking him not to call her there to avoid waking her mother. She explained that her mother was tired all the time and needed rest. Bridget promised to call the next night and asked Ty to be home. She bid him good night. As Ty expected, she wouldn't call tonight after leaving her message. He spent the evening packing his clothes and ensuring Bridget's belongings were neatly packed. With limited time before Sunday night, Ty aimed to avoid return trips after the movers finished tomorrow. Careful and methodical, he packed her things, ensuring a smooth process without room for complaints. He planned to stay at the bungalow tonight and ensure all calls were forwarded to his new cell, starting tomorrow. Once he had transferred everything to the bungalow, Ty wrapped up his tasks, made a phone call to confirm the last piece of the surprise was in place, and then went to bed. Pleasantly tired from the party and on edge, he hoped nothing would go wrong as he fell asleep. Saturday marked the packing and moving of the furniture from their home. Though somewhat sad, Ty shrugged his shoulders and left the movers to their work. He was going back to the bungalow to meet their kids, arriving right around noon, and Ty needed to go over his plans with them to avoid surprising them too much. He had given them a hint of his retirement, but withheld details about Costa Rica or anything else. Now was the time to bring them up to date. He had to extract promises from them not to call Bridget and spoil his surprise, thinking they would be okay with that. When they arrived, he welcomed them inside, sat them down to begin filling them in. Making it short and to the point, he answered all their questions and gave details when they asked for them. Neither Jake nor Tessa were happy with what he was doing, but he assured them that their college tuition was taken care of and that they would always be welcome home, wherever that was. He reassured them that his retirement was something both he and Bridget had discussed and agreed upon as the right time. They wanted to talk to Bridget, but he made them promise to wait until Sunday night. When she got home, they finally agreed. They all went out to dinner that evening and kept quiet when Ty answered the 9 o'clock call from Bridget. She kept it short, as usual, but didn't mention staying any longer, so he still expected her. Sunday night, after the call, the kids once again discussed his plans, wanting to be sure he still wanted to proceed. Ty assured them he was fine. When they went to sleep in the spare room with twin beds, he made a phone call to confirm the movers were done, and the cleaning crew was scheduled. Both were affirmative, and Ty was pleased. One final call, and he was done for the night. Sunday was a day when little had to be done, and most everything was ready. He checked the house and found all in place. The movers and cleaners had left the place spotless and ready to show. He drove back to the bungalow and waited for the call from Bridget, telling him she was ready to leave. He expected her to call at her normal time, between 10 and 10:30. The kids had gone out to be with some of their friends from home, so Ty was alone when she called. He answered after the first ring. Ty nervously asked Bridget if she was ready to start for home. She responded that she was just beginning and explained that she would like to stay a few more days to give her sister Bianca more time to do some things. Bridget's voice was strained, as if she expected Ty to object, well aware that he would not like her request. Ty heard the words, and for the first time felt the anger that he had been holding in check for the past several months, struggling to break free. She wanted to stay a few days longer. Why? Well, he knew now, didn't he? He had known for over 3 months now, long enough to begin planning his surprise. Now was the time to bring his surprise to the front. Now it was time to do what he had planned for the past 3 months. Once he found out for sure, now it was time. As he reached this decision, Ty's anger finally surfaced, having kept it in check for so long. With the anger making it difficult to speak without shouting, he responded to Bridget's request by expressing that he wouldn't mind her spending a few more nights, sarcastically referring to her lover, Kevin. Ty confronted her about her involvement with both Kevin and another man, Ben, stating that it bothered him. His voice rose in anger, and he struggled to restrain himself from screaming at her. Ty accused her of carrying on these relationships for the past 6 months or longer, expressing his frustration at having to pretend it was nothing. Silence followed from the other end, broken only by a sob, and then the phone went dead. Ty stared at the phone in his hand, as if it were a snake about to strike. He realized that Bridget had hung up, and that was an unexpected surprise. He finally placed the offending instrument on the table, his hand trembling with remaining anger. She hung up, and he had no outlet for his pent-up anger. As Ty slumped into the chair beside the table, his phone rang sharply. He stared at it uncomprehendingly as the sound reverberated from the walls. The disposable phone he had purchased for this purpose continued to ring, not having voicemail. Finally picking it up, he pushed the talk button. Yes, was all he could get out. His anger had burned out with the sudden end of it all. He had been primed for an argument or a shouting match, a screaming match between the cheating wife and her scorned husband. Her abrupt termination caught him by surprise and extinguished his anger like a bucket of water on a flame. Now he was numb, dead inside, and numb with the pain he had been holding back with his plan of action. Without the cathartic outlet for his anger and hurt, he was suddenly helpless to stop the piercing pain that clutched at his heart. Bianca's angry voice came through the tiny speaker, urging Ty not to hang up and expressing concern for Bridget, who was described as a wreck and almost hysterical. She questioned Ty about what he had said to Bridget and what he had done to cause her extreme reaction. Ty redirected his anger towards Bianca, viewing her as a full partner in Bridget's betrayal and as guilty as his cheating wife. He sarcastically informed Bianca that he had simply told Bridget to stay as long as she liked, to spend extra time with her lover, Kevin Clark. Ty accused both Bianca and Bridget of being involved with Ben Stinson and Kevin, detailing their rendezvous at a motel. He expressed anger, stopping himself from screaming at Bianca, and dismissed her plea for him to let Bridget explain. Bianca tried to defend Bridget, insisting it wasn't what Ty thought, and describing the situation as a stupid mistake for which she was equally at fault. She pleaded with Ty not to do anything drastic and urged him to wait until Bridget could talk to him. Ty, however, remained adamant, revealing that someone would be there when Bridget arrived, but it wouldn't be him. He accused Bridget of discarding their marriage and stated that she wanted to continue the affair with Kevin. Despite Bianca's pleas, Ty informed her that he had already told their children about the situation, including the weekends when Bridget claimed to be taking care of her mother. Ty asserted that the children had taken the news surprisingly well. In response to Bianca's desperate appeal for hope and reconsideration, Ty reiterated that it was Bridget and Bianca who had discarded their family. Ty bid goodbye to Bianca and mentioned saying goodbye to her mother, noting that she never liked him, and now she must be laughing her skinny buns off. Ty disconnected, then looked around the small bungalow for the last time. Bridget will love it, he thought to himself. Then he laughed at the thought. He turned off all the lights, put the spare keys on the table along with the letter to Bridget, and went out the front door. He pulled the door shut, got into his rental car, and drove to Rachel's apartment. She was waiting in front of the building for him as he pulled up. He got out, loaded her 3 suitcases into the back of the car, and then held the door as she climbed in. She smiled up at him as he shut the car door. He walked around to the driver's side and slid in. Rachel expressed her readiness for the situation, mentioning the challenge of seeing him every day at the firm without being able to touch or talk to him. She credited Bridget for throwing Ty away, allowing her to snap him up and enjoy their weekends together. They drove away from Bridget's story, and Rachel revealed that when she called Ty to ask if he minded her staying a couple more days, she had a strange feeling that it might not be a good idea. She shared her conversation with Bianca, who laughed at the idea of spending more nights with Kevin and Ben. Rachel admitted feeling a twinge of guilt when thinking about her time with both of them, but that guilt failed to survive her thoughts of lust. She described a thrill of wetness between her legs when recalling the moments with Kevin and Ben. I shuddered once and picked up the phone. The conversation started as usual, Ty asking me if I was coming home. He sounded so normal, reminding me that this was a world that Ty knew nothing about, and that gave me courage to do what I knew I wanted. I went for it, asking him if he minded if I stayed a couple of days. I looked at Bianca when I did, and her grin reassured me that I was doing the right thing. As I waited for his normal answer to do whatever made me happy, I thought once again to myself that Ty wouldn't mind, and he would never know what I was really doing. I would never let him find out because it would hurt him too much. I loved Ty. That was real. But lovemaking with him had lost its appeal to me. and now I had found an outlet that allowed me to continue to love my husband, but enjoy lovemaking with someone else. With him, I had found a wild side to myself that I never expected. I was thoroughly caught up in the illicit pleasure he gave me. I was pleased at myself, my own pleasure driving my lust to spend just 1 or even 2 more nights with Kevin and Ben. I was already imagining our night together, and I was becoming warm at the thought, until those words came out of the speaker and directly to my gut, destroying my world. Ty questioned why he should mind Bridget wanting to spend more nights with her lover Kevin, mentioning her involvement with both him and another guy, Ben. Ty expressed uncertainty about the duration, wondering if it had been 6 months or longer. He conveyed his frustration, feeling like he was supposed to pretend it was nothing. Bridget couldn't speak in response to Ty's accusations. I was frozen in fear and panic. I slammed the phone down, and I let out a loud sob. Just one, that's all. I was able to get out before it all became clear to me. Oh God, he knew, and my life was over. I was going to lose the only man I ever loved. I had to get home. I had to leave now to catch him before he had time to do something terrible. I grabbed my car keys and ran out of Bianca's kitchen. I started my car and backed out of her drive. I turned and headed toward the interstate and home. I had to get home. I had to. The drive usually took me 3.5 to 4 hours to make, but now I was pushing my car as fast as it would go. I was immune to any threat from the police who patrolled the interstate, and I cared nothing for speed limits. I had to get home before Ty had time to leave me. I had to talk to him, tell him that I loved him, and that I was a fool. I had done something stupid and selfish, but it didn't mean anything to me. Kevin and Ben were already gone. I'd never see them or Bianca again as long as I lived. I would tell him that I would give up everyone else if he would stay with me. Over and over, I rehearsed the words I would use to persuade him not to throw me away. I was seduced by Bianca and her lifestyle, and the lack of my lovemaking drive was a problem that she told me would disappear if I let myself go with someone who I didn't have to please or who I didn't care about. She convinced me that this would reawaken my lovemaking drive and that Ty would benefit. I was just going to try to get my drive back. But then I was seduced by the lust and the thrill of doing something nasty. It would revive me, and I would carry that back to my marriage bed with my husband. I was pleased at that. It would work. Ty would listen. He had to. 100 miles later, I asked the question Ty would ask. Why didn't any of that lust carry over? Why had we not made love in those 6 months since I had begun my affair? That was a question I had no answer for. I had to think of one. I had to think. I was still trying to find the words to answer that question. When I pulled into the driveway of our home, I was surprised to see 4 cars sitting in our driveway. I recognized the 2 cars belonging to my children, and I was surprised to see them there. But almost as quickly, a feeling of dread crept over me at their presence. I drove around them onto the grass and slid to a stop and clambered out of my car to run toward the house. As I did, I saw someone get out of one of the strange cars and move to intercept me at the front door. I ignored this man and reached for my keys. He tried to stop me, but I pushed him aside and slid my key into the lock. It didn't work. I tried again, over and over, but it wouldn't work. I threw it on the porch and held my face in my hands and began crying. I turned to the door and began pounding on it with my fists. I pounded until the pain in my hands forced me to stop. I looked around to see the man who got out of the car still standing there. He asked me if I was Mrs. Tyson Summers, and I nodded my head yes. He handed me an envelope and said in a low voice, "You are served, madam." He then took another, smaller envelope and handed that to me. "These are the keys to your new residence. The address is inside, and the property is yours without burden. You will find the deed and the necessary information inside." I took both envelopes and just stared at him. My mind was numb with sadness and pain. He reached into his coat pocket and handed me a legal-sized white envelope. This contains several checks amounting to the current savings and checking accounts, which have been closed. This house has been listed for sale, and the proceeds will go to you once the sale is completed. All of this is included in the divorce statements, and the terms are spelled out very clearly. The man closed his briefcase and prepared to leave. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a business card. "In case you've forgotten, this is the name of your husband's attorney." He moved away and got into his car. He spoke to the person sitting in the other car I didn't recognize before backing out and leaving. I was stunned. Holding the envelopes that the man had given me, I glanced down at the business card and saw that it was Stacy Reinhardt. That name caused a bolt of anger to course down my back, but it quickly died. Stacy was a problem only in my own head. I knew that, but I had used it over the years as a wedge to make Ty feel guilty. Now I knew better. But it didn't help to look up and see her walking toward me. "Hello, Bridget. You're not looking so well today. I just wanted to give you a heads up. Ty asked me to handle things in his absence. In case you're wondering and have lots of questions, I can give you some answers. First, Ty retired effective Friday. We all had a party for him. It was a great party, and lots of people came to see him off. Too bad you missed it. But then, you had other things more important, didn't you? Second, this house has been turned over to a realtor for sale. You signed your name to a power of attorney some time ago, and Ty used it to transfer the title into his name. But don't worry, the proceeds are all for you. Ty left it to you in the divorce. He also bought you a nice bungalow, paid for and furnished. Your children can take you there. Finally, Ty gave me full power to act in his behalf in the divorce and all his affairs here in the States. Ty has left the country, and I believe it is his intention not to return for some time." She stood there watching me as I digested the things she told me. It was as if each was a hammer that pounded the stake in my heart deeper and deeper. I was almost gasping for breath at the suddenness with which my life had collapsed in on me. I opened my mouth to ask questions, but nothing came out. I realized that I was smacked by a man whom I had blindly betrayed and disrespected so easily. A man that I knew in my heart was the only man I could ever love. Now I had lost his love, and I had no idea what to do. Suddenly, I was more alone than I had been over the last 20 years. I had my children and my life, but my anchor to all I cared about in this world had left me. I had never felt so alone in my life. "I can't know why you did this to Tyson, Bridget. I know from working with him for the last 15 years that he loved you and his children more than anything in this life. When he found out what you were doing, it almost homicided him. Roger and I helped him through the crisis he was in and made sure he stayed calm enough to make plans to deal with you. We made sure he didn't do anything foolish. Just so you know, he considered self-damage, but we talked him out of it by reminding him of your children. He's with someone else. Now that also helped him through the crisis you caused by your actions. It's not important who she is, just that she is with him and will care for him as this slowly runs its course. Tyson will not agree to talk to you, and he doesn't care if you fight the divorce. That will be in my hands, not his. So do what you will. Just know that Tyson is out of your life and will never be back." She turned and walked back to her car. Without looking back, she got into the passenger side of the car, and it left. I walked slowly down the drive to my children, who were standing together beside the cars. I had to face them and listen to their anger and condemnation. But I really didn't care anymore. I had betrayed my husband, their father, and I had lost him, and nothing else mattered. Their anger at me would not make any difference. Nothing they could say or do could hurt any more than the words I heard from Ty just that morning. God, how they hurt. And all he did was state the truth as he saw it. As I stopped in front of Jake and Tessa, my grief brought me to my knees. Jake reached down and helped me to stand, but there was no concern on his face. As I looked at him, I saw anger, disgust, disappointment, but no concern. That was painful to me, and I began to sob. And instead of holding me, my daughter stood in front of me with her arms crossed over her chest and her face mirroring that of her brother. I had told myself that I couldn't hurt any worse after losing Ty in my marriage. But the looks on the faces of my children told me in no uncertain terms exactly how they saw what I did, and it was even worse. I cried for what I had lost. As my children stood by and waited, they offered no comfort. I had lost them as well. I turned and looked once more at the home Ty and I had purchased to build our family. I loved that house and had always felt pride when I came home. Now it was gone. Everything was gone. My husband, my marriage, the love of my children, and the home we shared. What have I done? Why did I never think of the consequences of my actions? Why had I never considered that? I knew now consequences are a whinge.
Story 3.
Decades earlier, before the life-changing decision to marry, Maggie and I first crossed paths in a bustling college cafeteria. I was an overzealous law student buried in textbooks, while Maggie, with her paint-streaked fingers and bright laughter, instantly captivated everyone around her. She was an art major, the type of person who radiated creativity and curiosity. Our first conversation was brief, sparked by her borrowing a sugar packet from my table, but it planted a seed of intrigue that would flourish in the years to come. The first year of our relationship was tumultuous, yet exhilarating. Between juggling our studies and exploring our growing feelings, we often found ourselves sneaking away to late-night diners or quiet corners of campus to talk for hours. Maggie's unfiltered honesty contrasted with my meticulous nature, creating a balance that surprised and delighted us both. It was during these formative months that I realized Maggie wasn't just someone I wanted to date. She was the person I wanted to build a life with. After college, life pulled us in different directions. Maggie pursued her dream of studying at an art institute in Paris, while I accepted a demanding position at a prestigious law firm back home. The distance tested our commitment, but through long letters and sporadic visits, we managed to keep our love alive. During one particularly memorable trip to Paris, as we strolled under the twinkling lights of the Eiffel Tower, I proposed with a small sapphire ring. Her joyful yes still echoes in my memory as one of the happiest moments of my life. Our wedding was a modest yet heartfelt ceremony, held in the backyard of Maggie's childhood home. Surrounded by close friends and family, we promised to stand by each other through life's uncertainties. The day was filled with laughter, tears, and Maggie's signature creativity, as she had painted the table centerpieces herself. The highlight of the evening was our first dance, performed under a canopy of fairy lights as a live string quartet played softly in the background. In the early years of our marriage, we faced our share of challenges, from career struggles to financial worries. Despite the difficulties, we found solace in each other's unwavering support. Our bond deepened further with the birth of our daughter, Brandy, a spirited and curious child who quickly became the center of our world. Balancing parenthood with our ambitions was no easy feat, but we tackled it as a team, relying on mutual love and understanding. As Brandy grew older, life settled into a steady rhythm. Maggie's art began gaining recognition, and I found success in my legal career. We moved into a charming suburban home, complete with a small studio where Maggie could create freely. Yet, amid the comfort of routine, we occasionally yearned for the spark of spontaneity that had defined our early years. As I sat quietly at my desk, my thoughts wandered through the tapestry of memories created during the 30 years Maggie and I had spent as husband and wife. Among the many peaks and valleys of our journey together, one radiant memory stood out above the rest: our honeymoon. The vivid recollection of that unforgettable time in Hawaii, the shared experiences, and the deepened connection made me smile absent-mindedly. It wasn't merely a vacation. It was a tribute to the love that would guide the course of our lives. From the instant we set foot in Hawaii, it felt like we'd entered a paradise untouched by time. The pressures of daily life seemed to evaporate, replaced by a calm that's almost impossible to put into words. I can still picture us walking side by side along the powdery shores of Waikiki, the ocean's gentle waves curling around our ankles. The air was thick with the sweet aroma of plumeria, a fragrance that seemed to mirror the warmth and serenity of the islands. Everything about it felt like a dream we never wanted to end. But the true magic of that time came not just from the stunning landscapes, but from the moments we shared. We ventured into dense rainforests, where hidden waterfalls tumbled into sparkling pools, leaving us in awe of nature's beauty. I'll never forget standing beside Maggie, marveling at the wild magnificence of it all, feeling closer to her with every passing moment. In Maui, we stayed in a cliffside villa with panoramic views that seemed to stretch into infinity. Each evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and pink, we'd hold each other, savoring the quiet and the love we felt so deeply. Our nights were even more enchanting. Candlelit dinners on the beach became our favorite tradition. Under a starlit sky, we feasted on fresh seafood and local delicacies. But it was the way Maggie looked at me, her eyes full of warmth and affection, that made those dinners unforgettable. Hawaii wasn't just a destination. It became a living symbol of our love story, a chapter of our lives that we would treasure forever. Sitting there at my desk, I couldn't help but reflect on how deeply that trip had impacted us. It solidified a connection that had already been strong and infused our relationship with a sense of joy and peace that lingered long after we returned. Decades later, those memories still felt as vivid as ever, and the gratitude I felt for Maggie in those magical days remained as strong as ever. Lost in thought, I was pulled back to the present when my secretary entered the room. She paused, her eyebrows lifting as she noticed the faraway look on my face and the unmistakable smile playing on my lips. "Jason, you've been in such a great mood lately," she teased. "What's your secret? Did you hit the jackpot or something?" Her words made me chuckle, and I realized how much lighter I'd been feeling. "It's Maggie," I admitted, my voice warm. "She's been so thoughtful and loving these past couple of weeks. For the first time in years, I feel genuinely appreciated." I hesitated, then added, "Honestly, it feels like we're back on our honeymoon. I catch myself thinking about her all the time. I even call her a few times a day just to hear her voice and tell her how much I love her." I shook my head, laughing softly. "I know I sound ridiculous, like some love-struck kid, but I don't care. I feel alive again, and I don't want this feeling to end. Maggie and I had always shared a strong and steady relationship, but after 3 decades, it was natural for the spark to dim a little. Yet, in the past 2 weeks, something had shifted. Maggie's playful energy, her affectionate gestures, and her passion had reignited something between us. I didn't question the change. I simply embraced it as a chance to reconnect and rediscover what made us fall in love in the first place. That evening, I decided it was time to surprise her with a gesture of my own. Leaving work earlier than usual, I stopped by the florist to pick up 24 roses, then added a heartfelt card, a bottle of her favorite wine, and a box of chocolate-covered cherries to my collection. On top of that, I'd secretly planned a 7-day cruise to celebrate our love, and I couldn't wait to share the news. Buoyed by excitement, I walked into the house through the garage, eager to see her reaction. Instead of Maggie, though, I found our daughter, Brandy, sitting at the kitchen table. I leaned down to kiss her on the forehead and asked with a grin, "Hey, sweetie, where's your mom?" What I didn't realize was that 2 weeks earlier, Maggie and Brandy had shared a conversation that had set all these unexpected and wonderful changes into motion. It was a moment that had reshaped everything and reignited the magic we thought was fading.
"Brandy, I really don't know about this," I admitted, my voice shaky as doubt weighed heavily on me. "I love your dad so much, and I can't shake the fear that going through with this will hurt him in ways I can't fix." "Mom," Brandy said, her tone firm but comforting as she leaned forward slightly. "Dad adores you, and he'll understand. You've told me before that there are things you've wanted but never let yourself have. And let's face it, Dad's not getting any younger. This is just one time. He'd want you to be happy, even if it's a little unconventional." I exhaled slowly, my hands trembling in my lap. "I can't imagine telling him," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "The idea of looking him in the eye and admitting that I'm going on a date with another man. It's impossible. I could never." "Then you don't have to," Brandy said with a shrug, her calm demeanor almost unnerving. "Let me take care of it. Alexander will be waiting for you at 7 o'clock at the restaurant. You'll leave by 6, and when Dad gets home, I'll explain everything. You'll get the chance to feel something new, something you've been longing for." A deep sigh escaped me, and I pressed my fingers to my temples, trying to ground myself. "I don't know, Brandy. Yes, I said I'd go, but now that it's real, it feels wrong. What if this damages everything I've built with your father? How can I look at him knowing I've stepped into something like this?" "Mom," Brandy said gently, her voice softening, "you don't have to carry that guilt. Over the next 2 weeks, focus on showing Dad how much you care. Remind him that he's everything to you. When I explain, he'll understand that this isn't about replacing him. It's just about stepping out of your comfort zone and allowing yourself a moment of joy. He'll see how much you still love him. Believe me, he's always given you what you need, hasn't he?" I stared at her, conflicted. Her words rang true, but my heart still wavered. Slowly I nodded, the knot in my chest loosening just slightly. "Maybe you're right," I murmured. "It's just one evening, and it doesn't mean I'm abandoning your father. After 3 decades together, one night of something different shouldn't be so terrifying. I'll spend the next 2 weeks making sure he knows how much I love him, and when I come back, I'll remind him he's my world." Brandy smiled, her confidence bolstering my shaky resolve. "Exactly, Mom. Dad's a wonderful man. He'll understand, and it'll strengthen what you already have. Now I've got to run. Mike's waiting for me at home. Dinner doesn't make itself. Thanks, sweetheart, I said, a small smile creeping onto my face. Oh, and tell Mike I said hello. Are you two finally going to give me a grandchild? Brandy laughed as she grabbed her bag. Soon, Mom. We've talked about it. And we're planning to start trying in a few months. She kissed my cheek and left, the sound of the door clicking shut, leaving the house in a still silence. I wandered into the art studio Jason had lovingly built for me years ago. The space had become my sanctuary, though recently it felt like a cage, creativity stifled by the weight of my indecision. Sitting down at the easel, I stared at the blank canvas before me, the untouched brushes taunting me from the table. For weeks, my inspiration had been blocked, guilt and uncertainty strangling any spark I might have had. But as I sat there, Brandy's words began to echo in my mind, chipping away at the wall of doubt. Almost without thinking, I reached for a brush. My hand moved across the canvas in bold, sweeping strokes, colors spilling into vibrant shapes. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was creating something again. It felt liberating, like I was doing something just for me. In that quiet moment, I whispered to myself, Jason loves me. He always has. He might be upset, but I'll make him see this doesn't change how much he means to me. That evening, I decided to take things a step further. After a long, relaxing shower, I carefully styled my hair, applied makeup, and slipped into the baby doll nightgown Jason had always loved. A pair of high heels completed the look, adding a touch of confidence I hadn't felt in years. When Jason walked through the door, I greeted him with a warm smile and led him straight to the bedroom, surprising him with a spark of spontaneity we hadn't shared in ages. Maggie, this is the best welcome I've had in years, Jason said, his grin lighting up the room. Do you mean that? I teased, unable to hide my own smile. Absolutely, he said, pulling me close. I didn't realize how much I missed this. His words melted the last of my doubts. That night, we rediscovered a connection we'd let slip away. Over the next 2 weeks, we grew closer than ever, sharing laughter, closeness, and moments that felt like falling in love all over again. Jason seemed like a new man, brimming with life and joy, and I was happier than I'd been in years. Eventually, I began questioning the need for the date with Alexander. One evening, I confided in Brandy, voicing my uncertainty. I don't think I need to go through with this anymore, I admitted. Your dad and I have reconnected so beautifully. That's wonderful, Mom, she said thoughtfully. But don't make a decision just yet. Keep enjoying this time with Dad, but stay open to the idea. You might regret passing up the opportunity. Maybe, I said, weighing her words. Remind me again about Alexander. I know he's your friend's father, but tell me more about his story. Brandy's voice softened. Alexander's wife, Mary, passed away after a long battle with a brain tumor. She was his whole world, and after she died, he withdrew from everything, his family, his friends, even himself. For years, he's been stuck in that grief. When I suggested he try dating again, he said he didn't even know where to start. Her eyes brightened as she continued. When I mentioned you, something changed. He smiled for the first time in years. He said you seemed amazing and wanted to meet you. I think you could really help each other, Mom. Her words stayed with me, echoing in my thoughts as the date drew closer, stirring a mix of excitement and guilt. Texting with Alexander had an unexpected thrill. It was playful and exhilarating, awakening a flutter in my chest I hadn't experienced in years. Yet each evening I devoted myself completely to Jason, showering him with affection and attention, as though trying to balance the conflicting emotions churning within me.
I couldn't seem to stop smiling lately. Everything felt lighter, like a burden I hadn't even noticed was gone. Maggie, my wife of 30 years, seemed transformed too. She moved with a spark I hadn't seen in years, a passion that reminded me of the early days of our marriage. It was as if we were rediscovering one another, exploring a connection that was deeper, yet somehow brand new. She seemed overjoyed, caught in a moment that exceeded even her wildest dreams. I thought I couldn't be happier until everything unraveled. That evening, I walked into the kitchen carrying 24 roses, a bottle of wine, and a box of chocolates. To my surprise, Brandy, our only child, was sitting at the table. She looked up as I entered, and I felt the same rush of pride I always did when I saw her. Brandy had grown into an incredible young woman, strong and compassionate, someone I was proud to call my daughter. I sometimes regretted not spending more time with her while she was growing up. Work had always demanded so much of me, but I'd done my best to provide for her and Maggie, to give them a good life, and I thought I'd been there when it mattered most. "Brandy, what a nice surprise," I said, setting the gifts down on the table. "What are you doing here? And where's your mom?" I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I have a big surprise for her tonight. I'm taking her on a 7-day cruise aboard the new yacht, love. She's going to be thrilled. Don't say a word. I want it to be a surprise." Brandy didn't respond immediately. Instead, she gave me a look I couldn't quite decipher. There was something in her eyes, hesitation, maybe even fear. "Dad," she said softly, her voice carrying an uncharacteristic tremor. Hearing her tone, I felt a pang of worry. It reminded me of when she was little, sitting on my lap and struggling to tell me something that upset her. But this wasn't a child's confession. There was something deeper here, something that chilled me before she even said the words. "What's wrong?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "Is everything okay with your mom?" Brandy's hands trembled as she took a breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Mom's fine," she said quickly, though her tone betrayed her words. "But we need to talk." I pulled out a chair and sat across from her, trying to steady myself as dread crept into my chest. "Okay," I said carefully. "What's going on?" She hesitated, then started speaking, her words faltering. "You know how much Mom loves you, right?" she began. "She's been telling me how happy she's been lately, how much better things have felt between you two." "Yes," I said, nodding. "And I love her too. That's why I'm doing all this tonight, to show her how much I care." I gestured toward the roses and tickets, hoping to lighten whatever was weighing on her. Brandy's tears finally spilled over, and she looked away before meeting my eyes again. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "But Mom's on a date." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at her, my mind refusing to process what I'd just heard. "What?" I managed, my voice barely audible. "What are you talking about?" "She loves you, Dad," Brandy said, her voice breaking. "But she's out with someone else tonight. She couldn't tell you herself, so she asked me to. She didn't want to hurt you, but it's just for one night. She'll be back tomorrow." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" I asked, my voice rising. "Your mother would never betray me like this. We've been closer than ever. This doesn't make any sense." "Dad, please," Brandy said, trying to calm me. "Mom loves you. She just needed something different, something she felt was missing. She told me it wouldn't change how much she loves you. She thought it might even make things better." I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Why are you involved in this?" I demanded. "This is between your mother and me. She had no right to drag you into it." "Dad," Brandy said hesitantly, "Mom and I are close. We tell each other everything. She confided in me that she felt unwanted, like things had gotten stale. My friend's dad, he's been lonely since his wife passed. They connected, and I introduced them." "You what?" I shouted, my anger boiling over. "You introduced them? You set your mother up with another man? What on earth were you thinking?" "I was trying to help," Brandy said weakly, tears streaming down her face. "It sounds bad, but I thought it was what Mom needed. I didn't mean for it to hurt you." "Help?" I snapped. "Help who? Certainly not me. Where is she now? What did you mean she won't be home until tomorrow?" "She's at a restaurant," Brandy admitted quietly. "I don't know which one. After dinner, they're spending the night together, but only this once. She'll be back tomorrow." The betrayal crashed over me in waves. "So all her affection these past weeks was just her trying to cover her tracks?" I said bitterly. "She's throwing everything away for this?" "She's not throwing anything away," Brandy sobbed. "She loves you. She just needed this. Please try to understand." I stared at her, the weight of the betrayal twisting inside me. When I finally spoke, my voice was ice cold. "Brandy, I think you should leave. Now." "Dad, go," I said sharply. "You and your mother have made your choices. Now I need to make mine." Brandy sat at the table, her shoulders shaking as sobs racked her body. She buried her face in her hands, her voice muffled as she cried, "Dad, please don't say that. I love you, and I don't want to leave. Mom and I planned for me to stay tonight so you wouldn't be alone." I looked at her, my anger simmering just below the surface, threatening to boil over. "Brandy," I said, my tone cold and measured, "your actions tonight have made me question whether you ever truly respected me as a father. You are so much like your mother, cut from the same cloth. For years, I worked tirelessly to give you both the life you deserved. I sacrificed my time, my dreams, and my energy for this family. And this is my reward? Betrayal? Humiliation. I've clearly been nothing more than a provider to you two. Respect? Love? Apparently those were never part of the equation." Brandy lifted her tear-streaked face, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Dad, I love you. Please don't say that. Let Mom explain everything tomorrow. You've had 30 beautiful years together. I know you love her. Please, just give her this one thing and she won't leave you. She loves you." I shook my head, my voice growing louder with every word. "She might have her one thing, or two, or 1,000, but she will never have me again. Forgiveness? That's out of the question. And as for this lonely man who thought it was acceptable to go after a married woman, he'll face consequences too. Now leave me. You've shown me exactly where your loyalties lie. You still have your mother, and nothing will change for the two of you. You're a perfect match. As far as I'm concerned, Brandy, you are no longer my daughter. Get out of my sight." She rose slowly, her body trembling, tears streaming down her face. She looked at me one last time as if searching for some glimmer of understanding or forgiveness. When none came, she turned and bolted out of the house, the door slamming shut behind her, the sound echoing like a final nail in the coffin of our relationship. I stood motionless, the silence around me thick and suffocating. For the first time, Brandy might have realized just how far she'd gone. Helping her mother in this absurd scheme was a decision she couldn't undo. While I hoped she understood the consequences of her actions, I didn't care in that moment. The betrayal from Maggie and Brandy felt like a blow to the chest, leaving me dazed and unable to process it, and truthfully, I didn't want to. The moment she left, I grabbed my phone and dialed Maggie's number. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again and again with the same result. My frustration grew into fury as I left message after message, pleading for her to call me to come home. When the calls failed, I turned to text messages, pouring out every ounce of my anger, heartbreak, and desperation in a futile attempt to make her see the destruction she was causing. But nothing, no response. By 2 a.m, I knew she wasn't coming back. She hadn't even acknowledged me. I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the television, though I wasn't watching anything. The noise served as a meaningless distraction from the storm in my mind. My entire world had collapsed in a single evening. I couldn't stop thinking about the 30 years we'd spent together, the life we'd built, the love we'd shared. I thought about Brandy's birth, her childhood milestones, her wedding day. I remembered Maggie and I standing together, proud of the family we'd created, believing it was unshakable. Even in recent years, our closeness had been consistent, if routine. We still made love a few times a week, always ending the night with whispered, "I love yous," as we fell asleep in each other's arms. It wasn't fiery passion anymore, but it felt real, or so I'd thought. My eyes drifted to the window where the faint outline of Maggie's art studio was visible in the moonlight. I had built that studio for her 2 decades ago, pouring my time and effort into creating a space where she could thrive. It had become her sanctuary, filled with her paintings and sculptures, many of which had won awards. I'd been so proud of her, dedicating an entire room in our house to showcase her achievements. But now, that studio represented everything I'd sacrificed: time, love, energy, only for her to throw it all away. Fueled by a mix of booze and anger, I began pacing the house, my mind spinning with dark thoughts. The more I stared at that studio, the more it became a symbol of everything Maggie had destroyed. I couldn't sit still any longer. My sadness had turned into something else entirely, a determination to act. One by one, I began hauling Maggie's belongings into the studio. Her designer shoes, her expensive dresses, her jewelry, all of it went onto a growing pile in the center of her so-called sanctuary. I scoured the house, dragging down photo albums, wedding pictures, even keepsakes from the attic. Her wedding dress, Brandy's baby clothes, everything that once held sentimental value now felt meaningless. By the time dawn broke, the studio was packed with a mountain of memories I no longer cared about. I gave myself a deadline, 6 a.m. If Maggie hadn't returned by then, I would finish what I'd started. When the clock struck 6:05, my patience snapped. I grabbed a can of gasoline from the garage and drenched the pile, letting the fuel soak into the walls. My hands shook as I struck a match. I hesitated for only a moment before tossing it onto the studio floor. The flames roared to life, consuming everything in their path. I stood outside, watching as the fire raged, the heat stinging my skin. Smoke billowed into the sky, a visible symbol of my heartbreak and fury. When the flames grew too intense, I turned away, climbed into my truck, and drove off. My thoughts raced, but my heart felt unbearably heavy. Tears streamed down my face as I grasped the magnitude of what I'd done. By the time I reached a highway motel nearly 100 miles away, I was running on fumes. I paid in cash, not wanting to be found, and collapsed onto the bed. Exhaustion finally overtook me. When I woke around noon, I turned on my phone only to be bombarded with dozens of missed calls and messages. Brandy, Maggie, even the sheriff. The weight of that night crashed down on me all over again. There was no going back. My life, as I had known it, was gone forever.
As I stepped out of the Uber, a wave of nervous energy washed over me. My heart raced as I spotted Alexander waiting near the restaurant's entrance. He was undeniably attractive, his confident smile and relaxed posture instantly drawing my attention. Dressed sharply, he exuded a charm that made my pulse quicken. I had taken extra care with my appearance. My sleek black dress hugged my figure, sheer tights accentuated my legs, and my high heels added a touch of sophistication. Earlier that day, I'd spent hours perfecting my hair and makeup, determined to make this evening unforgettable for both of us. Alexander's eyes lit up as he saw me approach, his gaze lingering appreciatively on my outfit and the hint of skin revealed by the neckline of my dress. I felt his approval in the way he subtly adjusted his posture, and an unexpected surge of confidence bubbled up within me. Smiling, I leaned in to greet him with a light kiss on the cheek. His cologne was warm and inviting, a perfect complement to the spark of chemistry between us. We exchanged pleasantries before moving to the bar, settling onto the stools as the evening began. As we talked, I caught him stealing glances at my legs and the hem of my dress. His subtle yet undeniable interest made me feel desired in a way I hadn't felt in years. Smiling to myself, I decided to let go of my reservations. I silenced my phone and slipped it into my purse. Tonight was about living in the moment, free from distractions. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, peppered with flirtatious remarks and laughter. Alexander's easy charm and attentive demeanor drew me in, and I found myself touching his arm as I spoke, leaning closer than I usually would. It felt exhilarating, like rediscovering a side of myself I'd long forgotten. With each passing moment, I became more immersed in the energy between us, fully embracing the woman I'd kept hidden for so long. After our second drink, the hostess approached to escort us to our table. She led us to a cozy, dimly lit corner of the restaurant, where the ambiance felt intimate and perfect. The meal was exquisite, but it was Alexander's company that captivated me. He listened intently, his blue eyes never straying far from mine, and his witty comments kept me smiling. At one point, he leaned in and asked in a low, teasing voice, "Do you still want to spend the night with me?" Instead of answering, I responded with a playful gesture. Slipping off one of my heels, I slid my foot under the table, brushing it gently against his leg. His eyes widened as he glanced down, catching sight of my red-painted toenails through the sheer fabric of my tights. A slow, knowing smile spread across his face, and he murmured, "It's time we go." Hand in hand, we left the restaurant, the cool night air heightening the electricity between us. He led me to his hotel, where he'd booked a room in advance. As the elevator ascended, reality crept in, and for a fleeting moment, thoughts of Jason flickered in my mind. Alexander must have sensed my hesitation because he pulled me close, his strong arms grounding me. His kiss was deep and consuming, dissolving my doubts as if they'd never existed. In that instant, I chose to surrender to the night, to the moment, and to him. Inside the room, Alexander wasted no time. He unzipped my dress, letting it pool around my feet as he took in the sight of me. His appreciative gaze and gentle touch made me feel both beautiful and desired. He whispered softly as he undressed me further, his words igniting a heat I hadn't felt in years. When he laid me on the bed, every movement was deliberate, filled with care and passion. The night unfolded in a way I could never have imagined. Alexander's touch was confident yet tender, and his kisses left me breathless. He even asked me to put my heels back on, confessing how much he loved the look. His request was thrilling, making me feel daring and alive. As we made love, his intensity swept me away, leaving no room for guilt or second thoughts. In that moment, it was just us, lost in the electricity of our connection. At one point, Alexander looked deeply into my eyes and whispered, "I love you, Maggie." His words caught me off guard, stirring something raw and vulnerable inside me. Tears welled up as I absorbed the depth of the experience. It felt transformative, almost sacred. We didn't stop at once. The passion reignited again and again, each encounter more profound than the last. By morning, as the first rays of sunlight peeked through the curtains, reality began to return. The memories of Jason and the life we shared resurfaced, accompanied by an ache of guilt. Alexander, however, remained tender. Stroking my hair, he spoke softly. "Maggie, I meant what I said. You're incredible, sensual, strong, and captivating. I want to see you again. Can we make this happen?" I hesitated, knowing the truth was unavoidable. "Alexander," I began carefully, "this has been the most incredible experience of my life, and you are an amazing man. But I'm married, and this was a one-time thing. I can't do this again. I'll treasure tonight forever, but my place is with Jason." He held my gaze, his expression equal parts hopeful and understanding. "Think about it," he urged gently. "I can bring so much happiness into your life. If you ever change your mind, I'll be here." "I'll think about it," I promised, though deep down I knew my answer wouldn't change. He kissed me once more, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to imagine a life where this was possible. As I left the room, the weight of my decision settled over me. I couldn't deny the beauty of what I'd experienced, but I knew my heart and loyalty belonged to Jason. Now, all I could hope was that I could find a way to reconcile the choices I'd made with the life I still wanted to keep. After breakfast at the hotel, Alexander drove me home. As I turned on my phone for the first time since last night, a barrage of missed calls and messages flooded my screen. One message from Jason stood out, tugging painfully at my conscience. The thought of him suffering while I was absent made my chest tighten with guilt. My eyes brimmed with tears as I realized that his pain was my doing. Before I could scroll further, the phone began to ring. It was Brandy. "Mom, where are you?" she asked, her voice frantic. "I'm on my way home now," I replied, my stomach knotting. "What's wrong?" "Mom," she began shakily. "There was a fire at the house. We tried calling you all night, but your phone was off." "A fire?" I gasped, the word catching in my throat. "Is your dad okay? Where is he?" "That's the thing," she said, her voice breaking. "He's missing. Nobody's heard from him, and he's not answering his phone. I have a terrible feeling about this." "I'll be there soon," I said quickly. "Stay put. I'll call you back." As Alexander turned onto our street, my heart sank. Fire trucks and police vehicles crowded the driveway. From the front, the house looked intact, but a heavy sense of dread pressed down on me. I stepped out of the car and approached a firefighter standing nearby. "Excuse me, I'm Maggie Spencer, the homeowner. What happened?" My voice trembled as I spoke. The firefighter glanced at me, then at Alexander, before responding. "Mrs. Spencer, most of the house was spared, but there's significant smoke damage. You won't be able to stay here until it's cleaned up. The worst of it was in the small cottage behind the house. It's completely destroyed. I'm sorry." "My studio?" I whispered, the words barely escaping my lips. "It's gone?" He nodded solemnly. "I'm afraid so. There's nothing left but ashes. We'll investigate the cause, but in the meantime, a detective needs to speak with you." The weight of his words hit me like a blow. My legs gave out and Alexander caught me, guiding me to sit on the curb. Tears streamed down my face as I stared at the smoldering remains of my studio, the place where I'd poured my heart into my art. It was all gone. I barely noticed Detective Wilson approach until he spoke. "Mrs. Spencer, do you have any idea what happened here?" "No," I stammered, shaking my head. I wasn't home last night. I don't know anything about it. His eyes flicked to Alexander. And you are? He asked. Just a friend, Alexander replied uneasily. The detective's expression hardened as he turned back to me. Where is your husband, Mrs. Spencer? I don't know, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And where were you last night? I hesitated, then answered reluctantly. I was downtown, at the Hilton, with Alexander. His raised eyebrows and the exchanged glances between him and his colleague made my stomach churn. I had just admitted to being with another man while my husband was unaccounted for. The implications were damning. Mrs. Spencer, the detective continued, are you and your husband separated? Do you know where he might have been? No, I said quickly, my cheeks burning. We're not separated. We're happily married. The words sounded hollow even to me, given the circumstances. When you hear from him, have him call me, the detective said, handing me his card. We'll need to ask him some questions. As he walked away, I was left grappling with a storm of emotions. Grief for the loss of my studio, anger at the devastation of my sanctuary, and fear over Jason's disappearance. The possibility that he could be involved in this nightmare sent a chill through me. I called Brandy. Have you heard from your dad? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. No, she said, frustration lacing her tone. Why weren't you here last night, Mom? You promised you'd be here with him. I was about to respond when she added in a whisper. He threw me out. He told me I wasn't his daughter anymore. Her words hit me like a blow to the chest. Jason had always been a loving father. For him to say something so cruel was completely out of character. What had I done to push him to this point? Inside the house, the stench of smoke clung to everything, and the walls bore dark stains from the fire. It was clear that living here was impossible for the time being. As I moved through the rooms to gather a few things, dread settled over me. Entering the bedroom, I froze. Every trace of me was gone. My clothes, my shoes, my personal belongings. Even the wedding rings I'd left on the nightstand were missing. A sickening realization crept over me. Jason must have taken everything. Did he think I had abandoned him? Had he destroyed my things in a fit of anger? My knees buckled under the weight of my own guilt and fear. I rushed back to the studio, sifting through the charred remains. Among the ashes, I found scorched fragments of paintings, melted frames, and singed fabric. It was clear that Jason hadn't just left. He had erased me from his life. Overwhelmed, I called Brandy again, my voice breaking. Brandy, I can't stay here. I have nowhere to go. Alexander, who had been silently watching, stepped closer. You can stay with me, he offered gently. But I couldn't face him. Not now. I need to be alone, I said sharply. Hurt flashed across his face, but he nodded and left without another word. As I stood amidst the ruins of my life, tears streaming down my face, I felt utterly lost. Everything I had built, everything I had loved, seemed to be slipping through my fingers. At that moment, I was consumed by anger at myself and at Alexander. Deep down, I knew the blame was mine alone, but it was easier to resent him for the role he'd played in my betrayal. I hated myself for what I had done, for the selfish choices that had led to this moment. Through choked sobs, I turned to Brandy. I've lost your father, I said, my voice breaking. Don't say that, Mom, Brandy replied, her tone gentle but strained. Dad loves you. He always has. He burned everything, Brandy, I cried. All my clothes, my art, my studio, everything is gone. He didn't leave me a single thing, not even a place to stay. He won't answer my calls. I've hurt him so deeply, and I don't blame him for being furious. What I did to him was unforgivable. I shouldn't have gone on that date. I should have told him how I felt instead. We could have found a way to work through it. But my selfishness ruined everything. If I were him, I wouldn't forgive me either. What do I do now? I have no home, no clothes, nothing. Brandy's voice wavered as she tried to reassure me. Mom, you can't shoulder all the blame. I'm at fault too. You can stay with us until everything is sorted out. This afternoon, we'll go shopping for clothes and figure out the next steps. I shook my head, my voice trembling. Brandy, it's not just the house. It's everything. All my paintings, sculptures, years of work, they're all gone. 30 years of marriage, 2 decades of my life's passion. It's all destroyed, and now I'm completely alone. I don't even know what I'm living for anymore. I broke down, collapsing under the weight of grief as neighbors watched from the street. Then, as if the universe were twisting the knife, my phone began to ring. Seeing Jason's name on the screen made my heart stop. With trembling hands, I answered, desperate for a lifeline. "Jason, is that you?" I asked, breathless and hopeful. His voice came through, cold and detached. "How are you, Maggie?" he asked flatly. "Jason, please, where are you? We need to talk," I begged, trying to steady my voice. "No, Maggie," he said sharply. "There's nothing left to talk about. I know everything. Brandy told me, and let me be clear. She's your daughter, not mine. As far as I'm concerned, you're both dead to me. This will be the last time we speak." "Jason, no, don't say that," I cried. "I love you. You have to know that. Please come home so we can talk. The studio is gone. Did you do this?" His voice grew harsher. "Maggie, I didn't burn the studio. You did. Maybe not with your hands, but with your betrayal. When I saw your wedding rings abandoned on the dresser and knew you had given yourself to another man, you ceased to exist to me. You destroyed everything we had. And Brandy's involvement? It's beyond comprehension. I'm done. I'll meet with the lawyers on Monday to start the divorce." "Jason, please," I begged, my voice cracking. "We've spent 30 amazing years together. You can't just throw that away." "Maggie," he said, his tone ice cold, "you threw it away. You planned this, manipulated me into 2 weeks of affection just to ease your guilt before you cheated on me, with our daughter's help. It was cruel and unforgivable. No one could accept that kind of betrayal. I hope you regret this for the rest of your life. Don't contact me again. Speak to me through my lawyer." "Jason, no, wait, Jason!" I screamed into the phone, but the line went dead. Just like that, the man I loved and the life we had built was gone. I collapsed onto the ground, clutching the phone as sobs racked my body. Brandy arrived moments later and pulled me into her arms. Together, we cried over the loss of everything: my marriage, my home, and the world I had cherished. When we arrived at Brandy's house, she explained the situation to her husband, Mike. His reaction was immediate and explosive. "Brandy, you encouraged your mom to go on a date with another man?" he shouted, his voice thick with disbelief. "And you left your father alone? What were you thinking? Did you honestly believe he would just be okay with this? What kind of man would ever accept something like that? Is this how you'll treat me when we're older? Betray me the way your mom betrayed your dad? Jason was a good man. You and your mom were everything to him, and you destroyed him." Brandy stood frozen, her face pale as his anger continued to pour out. Mike's voice softened but remained firm. "I'll be calling Jason to apologize for what you've done. As for us, we need to talk, seriously talk, about where we go from here. I can't pretend this hasn't shaken me. Having kids with you? That's off the table until I'm sure I understand your values, because I won't tolerate anything like this in my own marriage." His words hit Brandy hard. She hadn't fully considered the deeper consequences of her actions until now. To her, it had been a single harmless night after years of marriage. But as she faced the reality of what her choices had unleashed, she realized the magnitude of the damage. Her parents' marriage was over, her family shattered, and her own relationship with Mike now hung by a thread. The consequences of her decisions were only beginning to unfold, and they would haunt all of us for a long time to come.
5 days after everything collapsed, I returned home to face the aftermath. I decided against involving insurance. The hassle wasn't worth it. During a meeting with my lawyer, I made one thing clear. The house was non-negotiable in the divorce. Maggie could take half of our savings, but I refused to pay child support. If she pushed back, I'd expose her affair with Brandy's friend's father. The divorce was already underway. I'd also consulted a criminal defense attorney about burning down the studio. Since I owned the property and wasn't filing an insurance claim, the risk of criminal charges was low. At most, I might face a fine. Relieved, I turned my focus to moving on from Maggie and rebuilding my life. Walking through the house, I surveyed the fire damage, estimating the cost of repairs. In one of the bedrooms, as I examined the walls, I heard the front door creak open. Brandy's voice echoed down the hall. "Dad, are you here?" she called, her tone urgent and shaky. I stayed silent, staring out the window at the ash pile that had been Maggie's art studio. A grim satisfaction settled over me. Brandy's footsteps grew louder until she appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. She ran to me, wrapping her arms around me. "Daddy, please forgive us," she sobbed. "We love you. I love you. Don't shut us out." I stiffened, stepping back to free myself from her grip. My voice was cold. "Brandy, I've told you, I'll never forgive either of you. Your betrayal is something I'll carry forever. Now leave." "No," she said, shaking her head despite her tears. "You're my father. You love me. You can't just erase me." I met her gaze, my expression unyielding. "You're wrong. I don't have a daughter anymore. The person who betrayed me isn't my child. Leave." Her voice cracked as she pleaded again. "Mom needs you. She cries all the time and regrets everything. She knows she made a mistake. Please talk to her." I shook my head, unmoved. "Never." She ended our marriage the moment she left her wedding rings on the table and spent the night with someone else. It's over. You and your mother can reach me through my lawyer. I'm changing my number today. Her voice broke. "You're really throwing away 30 years of marriage." "No, Brandy," I said sharply. "Your mother threw it away when she chose someone else. Both of you destroyed everything we built, and I'll never forgive that. Now get out of my house." Her face crumpled as fresh tears spilled. Without another word, she turned and ran, her sobs echoing down the hallway. The door slammed, leaving the house in silence. Brandy's pain was evident, but it paled compared to my own. Supporting Maggie's betrayal had crossed a line, and there was no undoing the damage. I wasn't ready to process it, let alone forgive. The next day, Maggie was served divorce papers. She was devastated, realizing the full extent of what she had lost. She tried to fight it, suggesting counseling and reaching out to me, but I ignored every attempt. From that moment on, I never spoke to her or Brandy again. Even Mike, Brandy's husband, called me in disbelief. "I can't believe what they did to you," he said. "It's making me question everything about my marriage to Brandy. If she can betray you, how can I trust her?" He admitted he was unsure about their future, especially having children. Counseling helped, but their marriage remained strained. Maggie's life fell apart. After the house was repaired, she wanted to move back in, but the divorce left it in my name. Instead, she ended up in a small apartment, working at an art gallery to survive. Her days of creative freedom and comfort were over. The life we had built was gone, reduced to distant memories. All of it, our love, our home, our future, was destroyed for a fleeting moment of excitement. No amount of regret or tears could change that. Sleepless nights haunted her as she grappled with the consequences of her choices. A few months after restoring the house, I sold it and moved away. Maggie, unaware of the sale, visited one day, hoping to see me, only to find strangers living there. It was the final blow, closing that chapter of her life for good.
When I rang the doorbell, a young couple answered. They seemed happy and content, a sharp contrast to the chaos inside me. The woman smiled warmly. "Hello, how can we help you?" she asked. I hesitated, swallowing hard. "I'm looking for Jason Spencer. Is he here?" Their expressions softened with recognition. "Oh, you mean the man who sold us this house?" the woman replied. Her words hit me like a blow. "No, he said he was leaving the country to start a new life. He was so kind and helpful." The pit in my stomach deepened. "Are you Maggie?" she asked. "Yes," I whispered. "He left an envelope for you," she said, stepping back into the house. Moments later, she returned and handed me a sealed letter. "He asked us to give this to you if you ever came by." I gripped the envelope tightly. "Thank you," I murmured, holding back tears. "Good luck, and enjoy this lovely home." Tears spilled down my cheeks as I walked back to my car. Sitting in the driver's seat, I clutched the envelope, the last connection to Jason. He was gone. Truly gone. The weight of that reality hit me harder than I thought possible. I had destroyed 30 years of love for one selfish night. What had I done? Back at my apartment, the emptiness echoed my despair. Sitting on the bed, trembling, I opened the envelope. Jason's familiar handwriting brought fresh tears as I read. "Maggie, 30 amazing years. I'll always cherish the life we shared. You were my first and only love, and I'm sorry I failed you as a husband. If I had known you needed more, I would have moved heaven and earth to provide it. But since you chose a different path, this is how our marriage ends, apart. Those 2 wonderful weeks before your betrayal made me believe you had fallen in love with me again. They were the happiest of my life. But when Brandy revealed how you used those moments to distract me, it shattered me. You probably know I planned a special night that evening. A surprise with roses, your favorite chocolates and wine. I wanted to celebrate us and gift you something meaningful, a new cruise on the yacht. When I learned your affection was fake and your true goal was to be with another man, I was utterly humiliated. You've succeeded, Maggie, in destroying me and our marriage. I can't stay in this city anymore. I've left my job and started over in another country. Don't try to find me. I've gone offline and have no interest in speaking to you or Brandy again. This chapter is closed and I'm moving on. It will take years to recover from the pain you both caused me. I couldn't stay in that home without the love of my life or my daughter. Since you're both gone to me, I have no reason to remain. I hope your night was worth it. Enjoy the memories you'll share with your daughter. Have a good life, Maggie. Forget me, as I have forgotten you. My new life begins now. J.S. By the time I finished reading, the tears I thought had dried long ago flowed freely, soaking my pillow as I curled into a ball. His words cut deeper than I could have imagined. The fleeting thrill of that one night now felt like a distant, bitter regret, replaced by overwhelming sorrow. I had destroyed everything. Jason's love, our life, the home we built. All for one moment of selfish indulgence. Now, at 52, I was alone. A shadow of the woman I once was, haunted by my choices. The future without Jason stretched ahead, empty and bleak. I had traded a life of love and meaning for a brief thrill, and the cost was more than I could bear.
Late one night, I stood outside Alexander's house, gripping a cold crowbar. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but after everything he had done to ruin my life, this confrontation felt inevitable. When the door opened, I forced my way inside. Alexander froze, startled by my presence and the anger written across my face. "Who are you?" he asked, stepping back cautiously. "Jason," I said evenly. "The husband of the woman you stole." His face shifted, a mix of fear and surprise. Raising his hands defensively, he stammered, "I thought Maggie was okay with it. I swear, I didn't know." "Save it," I snapped, stepping closer. "You knew she was married. You knew she was mine, and you didn't care." Before he could reply, months of rage and humiliation surged to the surface. I acted. The crowbar struck hard, and he crumpled to the floor, but I didn't stop. Each blow released the fury I had carried for too long. When I finally stopped, Alexander lay on the ground, visibly shaken and injured, his posture reflecting the aftermath of the altercation. I crouched down, locking eyes with him as he whimpered. "Here's some advice," I said coldly. "Messing with a married woman is bad for your health." I walked out, wiping my hands on my jeans, and climbed into the waiting Uber. As we headed to the airport, I felt neither regret nor satisfaction, just closure. By the time Alexander reached the hospital and contacted the police, I was already on a plane to my new life in Manabí, Ecuador. The authorities took 2 weeks to realize I had left the country. It didn't matter. Ecuador doesn't extradite for attack, and I had no intention of returning. Alexander would have to live with the aftermath of his choices, just as I had endured the fallout of Maggie's betrayal. From what I heard, he spent weeks in the hospital and months in physical therapy, learning to walk again. The 25 stitches on his face would forever remind him of his actions. Meanwhile, I started fresh. With over $750,000 from selling my house and savings, my beachfront apartment in Ecuador would sustain me for life. 6 months later, I sat on a beach in Puerto Lopez, beer in hand, watching the waves. For the first time in ages, I felt at peace. Breakups happen. Divorce is normal. What isn't normal is staying in a place where you're not valued. Maggie's life had unraveled. She ended up in a tiny apartment, working at an art gallery to make ends meet. Brandy, her co-conspirator, faced her own struggles. Her husband nearly divorced her, but eventually stayed, though it took years for him to trust her again. None of it mattered to me. Sitting on that beach, I knew one thing for sure. My past was behind me. I had burned the bridges that tethered me to a life of betrayal and pain. My future was mine to build, and it looked brighter than ever.
Story 4. Adoptive son chooses his struggling biological parents over us, cutting ties and excluding us from his wedding after years of love, sacrifice, and support. This has been one of the most heartbreaking incidents for both my husband and me. We've been struggling to process this for the past few days. I'm hoping that expressing all of this may help me and also receive some suggestions on what steps I should take moving forward. My husband is 62 years old, and I'm 59. We find ourselves in a situation that is tearing our family apart and has damaged our relationship with our son. This will be a lengthy post, but I want to provide all the context so that all of you can understand the full picture. Our son George, 27 male, was just around 2 years old when we welcomed him into our family. Our adoption journey began when we discovered that I was unable to conceive children. This was a difficult realization for both my husband and me. However, during a visit to meet with relatives, we received unexpected news about a child in need of a loving and stable home. It was heartbreaking to learn that George's biological parents were struggling with addiction and were unable to care for him. While we felt deep compassion for their situation and hoped for their recovery, we also felt overwhelming joy at the thought of providing George with the home and family he deserved. The adoption process was a lengthy one, involving complex legal procedures and mountains of paperwork. After almost a year of navigating through these challenges, we were finally able to bring George into our home. Despite the closed nature of the adoption at his biological parents' request, we made sure to keep a letter and photo that they had left for George, should he ever wish to learn about his biological roots. As a family, we were committed to ensuring that George grew up knowing his full story and roots, even as we welcomed him into our hearts as our precious baby boy. From the moment George entered our lives, we poured all our love and energy into raising him. It was truly a transformative experience, and he brought so much joy into our lives. Despite not having a lot of financial resources, we made sure he had everything he needed. We made it a point to attend every school play, cheer at every soccer game, and stay up countless nights helping with homework or comforting him after nightmares. We were there for him through every skinned knee, every achievement, every heartbreak, because he was the center of our universe. George excelled in school and earned admission to a prestigious college. We worked tirelessly to gather every penny we could to support him and ensure he could graduate without the burden of debt. To this day, we are filled with pride and joy seeing the kind, intelligent, and generous man that George has grown to be. Anyway, as George reached the age of 16, his curiosity about his biological parents naturally grew. When he approached us with his questions, we handed him the letter and photo they had left for him. We made it clear to him that we would support his search for them if he ever decided to do so. At that time, we chose not to delve into the details of his bio-parents' addiction because we did not want to portray them in a negative light. Instead, we sensitively explained that their circumstances were not good enough to raise a child. George appeared to be content with the letter and our concise explanation, and we assumed the matter had been resolved, and that was that. The most joyful moment was when George met his future wife, Megan, 26 female, during his senior year, exciting everyone in our family. Megan's kindness and intelligence seemed to bring out the best in George, and their love for each other was evident. We warmly welcomed her into our family, as she truly felt like the daughter I had always hoped for. Overall, Megan and George were the ideal couple. Everything seemed great until about 6 months ago. George announced that he'd managed to track down and contact his biological parents. We were caught off guard, but were still supportive. We told him to be careful and to take things slowly, but we were happy he might get some closure and could even go as far as having a civil relationship. But what happened in the next few weeks was alarming, to say the least. George became obsessed with his bio-parents. He'd cancel plans with us to spend time with them. This became very apparent when he decided to hang out with his bio-parents on the 4th of July. Ever since he was a kid, we had this ritual of going fishing, but this time he wasn't here with us. What saddened and irked me the most was that he was doing our ritual with his other parents. When we did see him, all he could talk about was how cool they were, how they were finding themselves, and how they'd really turned their lives around. We learned that his biological parents were still struggling with addiction. Our relatives did some digging and discovered that they frequently got into fights with their neighbors. They had a history of going in and out of rehab, were unable to maintain steady employment, and resided in a small, dingy apartment. Despite this, George seemed oblivious to their struggles, only seeing an idealized version of them that he had constructed in his mind. After the announcement of the upcoming wedding, there was great excitement as George and Megan officially got engaged. Our joy knew no bounds, and we immediately offered to cover the wedding expenses, despite knowing it would put a strain on our finances. Our sons and daughter-in-law's happiness meant everything to us. They graciously accepted our offer, and together we began the intricate process of planning the wedding. Unexpectedly, around 2 months into the wedding planning, George revealed a shocking request. He expressed his desire for his biological parents to take on significant roles in the wedding ceremony. He wanted his biological father to walk him down the aisle, his biological mother to share the mother-son dance, and both of them to address the attendees during the reception. Not once did George ask our opinion or how we would feel about this new proposition. He was informing us. So we sat down and accepted his new plan. We were deeply hurt. Later, when we tried to talk about it to understand his reasoning, he became defensive. He accused us of trying to erase his heritage and pretend his real parents didn't exist. We assured him that wasn't the case at all, that we just wanted to be part of his special day too. George wouldn't budge. In fact, it got worse. He announced that he didn't want us to have any special roles in the wedding at all. We could attend as regular guests, but that was it. No walking down the aisle, no special dances, no speeches, nothing at all. He said he wanted the focus to be on his real family, and us participating in anything was just senseless. Despite the hurt it caused, my husband and I continued to ignore the pain. When George referred to his biological parents as his real parents, we were absolutely devastated by the situation. But we constantly reminded ourselves that George was grappling with difficult emotions, and that his behavior was likely just a passing phase. However, our hopes were shattered when George took a drastic step. He called us and expressed that he no longer wanted us to attend the wedding at all. He explained that our presence would be too complicated and might confuse the guests about who his real parents were. Instead, he suggested that we watch the ceremony through a live stream if we wished to participate. My husband and I were at a point of deep emotional pain. After a lengthy and heartfelt conversation, we made the difficult decision to retract our offer to financially support George's wedding. We communicated to George that if he felt uncomfortable with our presence or our financial contribution, we would not impose ourselves upon him. We also informed him that his biological parents were more than welcome to assume the responsibility for the wedding they were hosting. To our surprise, George's reaction was not one of disappointment but rather of almost apparent relief. He expressed that it was probably for the best, and that his real parents had offered to cover all the expenses anyway. This revelation was both shocking and bewildering. I could feel my heart shattering as my son hung up on me. In the months that followed, my husband and I were dealing with a lot of grief, so we kind of avoided talking about the wedding. We heard from friends and family that the wedding planning was a bit of a mess, vendors weren't getting paid on time, the venue was threatening to cancel, and the wedding planner was apparently telling the couple to lower their expectations for the products and consider changing the venue. On top of that, George's biological parents were making big promises that they couldn't live up to. It all sounded like real chaos. We were in a tough spot. Both of us wanted to jump in and fix everything for George, to show him how much we cared, but then we also felt like George needed to face the consequences of his choices. In the end, we decided to stay out of it, even though it deeply pained us. The only effort I made from my side was that I called Megan once, but when she didn't pick up my call either, I knew it was time to back off. It would be wrong if I said I didn't hope that my son changed his mind at the last moment. I prayed that he would at least let us be part of the wedding, even as some strangers sitting at the back. That is why, when our doorbell rang at 11 p.m. the night before the wedding, I dashed to open the door, but it was not who I was expecting. It was Megan. Megan was hysterical. She was inconsolable. When she finally calmed down a little bit, we got to know what had happened. George and his real parents told her that we were not willing to be part of the wedding if his bio parents were there. Also, we had sabotaged their wedding by canceling the funds for the venue at the last moment because we could not bear their happiness. I could not believe that George, my son, whom I loved with my whole heart, said stuff like this about us. She was horrified by George's behavior and couldn't believe he treated us this way. She revealed that George's biological parents had essentially abandoned the wedding preparations, leaving everything in chaos. Most vendors hadn't been paid, the venue was canceling, and the whole thing was falling apart. When Megan discussed this with George, he made it seem like the villains were us and defended his bio parents by saying, "How could they ever bring such a huge amount at the last moment?" concealing the fact that they paid for almost nothing. After this whole conversation, even Megan was confused, used, and kept questioning him. Why would his parents, who raised him and put him through everything, leave on such a momentous occasion? It was a lucky coincidence that Megan had a chat with one of the guests invited, who was also a family friend of ours. They clarified everything, and as soon as Megan got the whole story, she decided to come to us crying. Megan also told us how aggressive George had become ever since he started hanging out with his bio parents. When things would go wrong, even the slightest bit, he would lash out and get frustrated. She also once caught him having a talk with his parents, where his bio mother was telling him how George needs to make sure that Megan always respects his opinions, and that's her duty as his wife. She kept ignoring all of this because she thought that this would pass, and that the man that she got engaged to was better than this. But this lie about us was the final straw for her, when she realized how much she had been lied to in the past months. Megan knew she had to leave. Through her tears, Megan told us she decided to call off the wedding. She couldn't marry someone who could treat their family, their real family, with such disregard. She was also deeply troubled by George's apparent ease with lying to her about the situation. We comforted Megan as best we could. While part of us was proud of her for taking a moral stand, we were also devastated. We had loved Megan like a daughter, and now we were losing her too. We were also mourning the future we had envisioned: grandchildren, family holidays, and a growing family filled with love. Megan left after a few hours, determined to break the news to George and her own family. We sat in our quiet living room holding each other and trying to process everything that had happened. As I already mentioned, it's been a week since that night. The wedding was canceled. We've heard through the grapevine that George is furious, blaming us for poisoning Megan against him. We also got to know that his biological parents had this whole speech about how we stole their child from them and they never wanted us to have George. And that's why we broke off their son's wedding as an act of vengeance for their active involvement in the wedding. Not long after that, they disappeared again, leaving George to deal with the fallout of the canceled wedding on his own. We find ourselves in a state of complete sorrow. Our love for George transcends biology. He is and will always be our son. However, we are grappling with profound hurt as we struggle to understand his actions toward us. Despite our efforts to communicate with him, he did not respond to our calls or messages. We are nothing but tired of leaving endless voicemails. A part of me wonders whether everything would have been good if we had simply proceeded with paying for the wedding despite our emotional turmoil, solely for George's sake. On the other hand, there is a sense that we need to assert ourselves and make George aware of the consequences of his actions, and that we would not tolerate such disrespect. Here we are, turning to Reddit for support. Two parents shattered by the loss of our son and the future we had envisioned. We are left questioning our missteps. Did we unknowingly drive George away? Could we have handled the situation differently? AITA for withdrawing our financial support? Should we have just paid for everything anyway? How do we move forward from here? We're at a loss and could really use some outside perspective. Update 1. First of all, thank you all for your responses. I'm truly grateful for all the suggestions and bits of advice that everyone has given. I'm trying to read through everything and will respond when I can. After this whole incident, we are frequently checking up on Megan. The wedding breakup hit her very hard, but she has been very strong and resilient. She also informed us that she got multiple calls from George saying that whatever lies we have told her are just an act of revenge, and that we always manipulated him, wanting him to do things according to us. A lot of you have asked for more details about why Megan left George, so I'll try to clarify that here. From our conversation with Megan that night and from what we've heard since, several factors led to her decision. First and foremost, Megan was deeply hurt that George had lied to her about our involvement in the wedding. He had told her that we chose not to be involved, painting us as the antagonists. Finding out the truth made her question George's honesty in other areas of their relationship. Megan herself comes from a close-knit family and places a high value on family relationships. She couldn't understand or accept how George could so easily disregard the parents who had raised him with love and care for over 2 decades. She had met us on so many occasions and could not fathom us abandoning our son on such a happy occasion. Megan disclosed some pretty alarming stuff about George's interactions with his biological parents. According to her, when they had newly met, George's bio parents had been consistently pressuring George to approach us for additional funds under the guise of wedding preparations. This wasn't just a one-time request, it was a persistent effort that wore on George's mental health. But they were very clever with their manipulation. They would pressure and guilt-trip him into things one moment and then another, they would be back to their loving and caring disguise. When George showed any hesitation about asking us for more money, his biological parents would resort to emotional manipulation. They'd question his commitment to them, implying that if he truly cared, he wouldn't think twice about making these financial requests. This manipulative behavior placed George in an impossible position, torn between his desire to please his biological parents and his discomfort with constantly asking us for money. If all this was not enough, here comes some more. Their manipulation did not end with George. George's biological parents had deceived Megan and taken money from her. Despite being aware of their difficult circumstances, she had chosen to overlook the incident to avoid appearing petty, especially to someone so close to her future husband. Just 2 months before the wedding, George's biological mother contacted Megan, requesting financial assistance to book flight tickets for the wedding. Although caught off guard, Megan ended up lending them the money. Following the cancellation of the wedding, Megan reached out to George's biological parents for the borrowed money, but she has yet to receive a response. When she tried to discuss this with George, he reacted very nonchalantly, saying that this would just foster a better relationship between her and his bio mother. Megan observed the toll this was taking on George. She noted significant changes in his behavior, increased anxiety, trouble sleeping, and sudden mood swings. She recounted instances where she'd find George awake in the middle of the night, visibly distressed about financial matters, and the fear of disappointing his biological parents. The situation escalated to the point where Megan overheard a particularly distressing phone call between George and his biological mother. The conversation was totally a guilt trip, where his bio mother kept suggesting that George valued his relationship with us more than with them. This level of manipulation deeply alarmed Megan. Despite her attempts to discuss these issues with George, he became defensive and refused to acknowledge the harmful dynamics at play. Megan expressed that watching the person she loved being emotionally manipulated in this way was one of the primary factors that led her to reconsider their relationship and ultimately the wedding itself. Amidst the whirlwind of wedding planning, which included dealing with unpaid vendors, an expensive venue, an annoyed wedding planner, and broken promises, Megan came to the realization that George might not be prepared for the financial obligations that come with marriage. She was particularly troubled by the fact that George chose to decline our offer to cover the wedding expenses in favor of relying on unreliable promises from his biological parents. Megan was deeply unsettled by George's apparent lack of consideration for ours and her emotions. She believed that even if George desired a relationship with his biological parents, his approach displayed a coldness that she had not previously observed in him. Despite clear evidence that George's biological parents were still struggling with addiction and reliability issues, George continued to idolize them. Megan was concerned about the impact this could have on their future, especially if they had children. She would not want some aggressive grandparents who are struggling with addiction to be around her kids in the future. The way George handled the entire situation, making unilateral decisions, refusing to communicate, and lashing out when challenged, made Megan worry about how he would handle conflicts in their marriage. Would his bio parents still be around, making wrong and idiotic decisions for him? And if yes, what position would she be in, where she is abandoned by her own husband? Ultimately, Megan felt that George's actions revealed a fundamental difference in their values, especially regarding family loyalty and honesty. She realized that perhaps they weren't as compatible as she had thought. Megan told us that while she still loved George, she couldn't move forward with the marriage given all these issues. She felt that canceling the wedding, while painful, was better than going through with it and potentially facing a painful divorce down the line. We do not know what to think at this point, to be honest. We are angry at George for the position he put Megan in, but at the same time, we also pity him since he was also manipulated into this situation and was forced to be at a point where he has to choose between his biological parents and adoptive parents. What my husband and I can agree on is that we are happy that Megan is out of this mess because she did not deserve to be in such a toxic environment. Update 2. Many of you have asked about George's childhood and if there were any signs of this behavior before. I'll try to address that here. Looking back in light of recent events, it became evident that George had always displayed a sensitive nature. His struggles with feelings of abandonment were apparent, despite our best efforts to provide him with a sense of security and affection. When he was younger, we took him to therapy to aid him in processing the complex emotions surrounding his adoption. The therapist recommended that we approach his adoption with openness from an early age, and we consistently emphasized how much we wanted him and the love we held for him. As a young child, George displayed a strong attachment to us, making it difficult for him to separate for even the smallest period of time. When we dropped him off at daycare, his crying episodes lasted longer than what is typical for children his age. Seeking professional help from his pediatrician and therapist, we assisted George in building feelings of security and confidence, which was a challenging and lengthy process. Academically, George excelled in elementary school but struggled socially, showing hesitancy in making friends due to fear of rejection. To help him gain confidence, we encouraged his participation in clubs and sports teams, which gradually improved his social skills. Despite the progress, he continued to be more sensitive to perceived criticism and rejections compared to his peers. As a teenager, George went through a rebellious phase, but we always chalked it up to normal teenage angst. He would sometimes lash out saying things like, "You're not my real parents," in the heat of arguments, but he always apologized afterward. We thought he had worked through those feelings. During this period, George developed a deep fascination with understanding his own personal identity. He delved into extensive online research on different personality types and invested significant time in figuring out where he belonged. His exploration extended to experimenting with various styles of dress and music, leading to noticeable changes in his appearance from week to week. While we encouraged and supported his journey of self-discovery, we were concerned about how quickly he'd abandon one identity for another. This was not a matter of concern then, because doesn't every child go through these phases, the rethinking, the transition, and the constant urge to know yourself, as well as everyone else, in a better manner? But now, in retrospect, we're just wondering what we could have changed to ensure that everything was okay today. There was also a period when George was about 16 when he became obsessed with the idea of finding his true self. He started questioning everything about his upbringing, including our parenting decisions. There were times when he also accused us of not understanding him and of trying to mold him into someone he wasn't. We were taken aback because we had always tried to support his individuality and interests. We encouraged George to explore his feelings in therapy, which he agreed to for a while. The therapist helped him work through some of his anger and confusion, and things seemed to improve. By the time he left for college, we thought he had worked through most of these issues. Looking back, maybe these were signs of the identity struggles that would surface later, but as I said earlier, at the time, it just seemed like normal teenage identity formation. George appeared to have moved past these concerns, excelling in college and seeming more comfortable with himself. Now, in light of recent events, we're reevaluating these memories. We're trying to understand if we missed any crucial signs, or if there was more we could have done to help George feel secure in his identity and his place in our family. I hope this additional context helps. We're still trying to process everything and understand where we go from here. Thank you all for your insights and support. Update 3. Thank you all for your overwhelming support and advice. Many of you have suggested family therapy, and we think that's a great idea, if George is willing, of course. We're going to give him some space for now, but we'll reach out in a few weeks to see if he's open to working through this together. We've researched several therapists in our area who specialize in adoption-related family issues and have experience with adult adoptees reconnecting with biological families. Some of you have also advised us to look into support groups for parents of estranged children. We'll definitely look into that. It helps to know we're not alone in this situation. We found a local group that meets weekly and plan to attend our first session next Thursday. Just knowing there are others out there who understand our pain has already provided some comfort. To those asking about Megan, we've been in touch with her regularly. She's doing okay, all things considered, though she's understandably still processing everything. She asked us if we'd be willing to stay in contact, and we said yes without hesitation. She's been a part of our family for years, and we care deeply about her well-being. 2 days ago, we had her over for dinner. It was bittersweet, lovely to see her, but a stark reminder of what we've all lost and might not ever have again. As for George's biological parents, we don't have much concrete information. From what we've heard through mutual acquaintances, they've fallen out of contact with George again. This pattern of appearing and disappearing seems to be a recurring theme with them. We're deeply worried about how George is coping with all of this, but he's still not responding to our attempts to reach out. We've left voicemails, sent texts, and even written a heartfelt letter, but so far, silence. We've recently learned some troubling information about George's current state. A colleague of George's reached out to us, expressing concern about his behavior at work. Apparently, George has been showing up late, missing deadlines, and snapping at coworkers, all completely out of character for him. There's worry that his job may be at risk if this continues. We discovered that George has been frequenting a local bar almost nightly. Now, let me be clear, we are not stalking him. A family friend spotted him there several times, always alone and appearing despondent. This is particularly concerning given the history of addiction in his biological family. We do not want him to go down the same path. Megan informed us that George has been making some concerning posts on social media, hinting at feelings of abandonment and betrayal. While he hasn't named names, the implication seems to be that he feels let down by everyone in his life. We've also learned that George has withdrawn a significant amount of money from his savings account. We're worried about what this might mean and hope he's not sending money to his biological parents or falling into some sort of financial trouble. A neighbor mentioned seeing unfamiliar cars parked outside George's apartment at odd hours. We're concerned about the company he might be keeping and hope he's not falling in with a bad crowd. We're taking things one day at a time, trying to balance giving George space with our desire to help him. Your comments and support have been a real comfort during this difficult time. We'll update if there are any significant developments. Thank you all again for your kindness and advice. It means more than you know to have this support during such a challenging time. Update 4. We finally got a call from George. After 1.5 weeks since the wedding cancellation, George called my husband. From what we could guess, he seemed hysterical. He was constantly crying and apologizing for everything that happened. We were right when we thought that he had fallen in with a bad crowd and started drinking, but luckily, he realized what he was doing and decided to call us. He accepted the fact that he had hurt us, and nothing that he would say would change what happened, but he was willing to change and get therapy so he could get better. He also cut all contact with his bio parents, but right before that he made a call and told his bio mother very seriously that if they did not return Megan's money in the next 24 hours, he would file a police complaint. We confirmed with Megan that she had received the money in her bank account. We also told Megan about George's call. And she said that she still needs some time to recover from everything. Safe to say that the wedding is not happening anytime soon. But maybe that's for the better, since George will also need some time and space to get back to normalcy. In the meantime, we're focusing on self-care and healing. We've started seeing a therapist ourselves to work through our feelings of guilt, loss, and confusion. We're also trying to stay busy. I've taken up gardening. My husband has returned to his old hobby of woodworking. It helps to have something to focus on besides our worry for George. I cannot express in words how grateful I am for all the support and advice that I got here. The support group has also given me a better insight into everything that happened, and I feel like we're doing much better. Thank you, people. We are deeply thankful for your help.